Okay, very good. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. This meeting is now called to order. It is 7:02. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Director Sear.
Here.
Director Hassett. Director Holman.
Here.
Director Kirstine Tucker.
Here.
Director Kishimoto.
Here.
Director Riffle.
Here.
And Director Siemens.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Well, once again, good evening, everyone. My name is Zoe Kirstine Tucker. I'm president of the Board of Directors, and I'd like to begin our meeting this evening with a review of the district's teleconference meeting procedures. This meeting is being held in accordance with a recent amendment to the Brown Act through legislation known as AB 361, which allows a fully remote meeting during proclaimed emergencies. We are doing our best to conduct a meeting where everyone has an opportunity to listen to the meeting and to provide comment. The meeting agenda explains how members of the public can provide comments at this meeting. The public may submit written comments and may provide public comment through the internet or via telephone. Members of the public who wish to comment during the meeting should submit the online public comment form available on the district website. Let's start by briefly describing the process for today's meeting. Board members and district staff will be participating in the Zoom online meeting as panelists to have the ability to mute and unmute themselves and interact among each other. Members of the public will join as attendees. They will be able to hear and see all presentations, but they will not be able to unmute themselves or share their screens. During the public comment period, the district clerk will call on members of the public individually who have submitted an online public comment form. Commenters will be allowed to unmute themselves to address the board for up to 3 minutes. At the end of the 3 minutes, they will be muted. Video of guests is turned off in Zoom. This will help the meeting run without interruption. Board members and staff, please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking in order to minimize background noise. I'll be asking for board member questions and comments by calling on each individual board member. This will help prevent us from talking over each other. I'd like to remind all staff members to announce their names and titles when speaking to ensure that the board and the public know who is speaking. Thank you. All right, a report out on our closed session. We have nothing to report on that this evening. Next up, we'll move to oral communications. Are there comments from members of the public on matters within the jurisdiction of the district that are not on the agenda tonight?
President Kirstine Tucker, there are no oral comments, oral communications items to be read into the record or requests for oral comments. Thank you.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you. We'll move now to something that I know we all look forward to, and that is introduction of some new staff. So Anna, would you like to start us off on that?
I would love to. This is Anna Ruiz, General Manager. Just opening up before we introduce our fabulous new staff, I just wanted to let the board know we have a number of new staff introductions today. For a number of reasons, we have folks who sometimes leave for promotional opportunities. We, I believe, have one lateral move that happened internally that opened up the space, and a number of other reasons. But time and time again, when we go out and recruit for new positions, new staff, I have to say that I'm always blown away by our stellar candidates. And we have new staff members here that we're introducing that come with exceptional expertise and professional experience that will be lending their talents and their skills and insights to Mid-Penn and to the great work that we do here in conserving our natural environment. And we're so happy to have them as part of our team. And we'll start first with 2 planner introductions in our planning department. So if our planning manager, Jane Mark, can begin those, please.
Thank you, General Manager Ruiz and Board President Kirstine Tucker and board members. I am Jane Mark, Planning Manager. I am very excited to share our 2 new planners who joined the planning team on May 31st. So first I will introduce Brittany Wheatman, and then subsequently I will introduce Matea Curtis. So let me first introduce Brittany and ask her to turn on her camera so you could see her. Brittany was born and raised in Honolulu and worked as an environmental planner for the past 6 years after receiving her undergraduate degree in environmental science at Boston University. Brittany has prepared environmental and land use planning reports, conducted public engagement and outreach with a focus on state and federal environmental assessments for projects that included the Honolulu Transit-Oriented Development Plan, the Haiena State Park Master Plan on the island of Kauai, Diamond Head Hiking Trail Management Plan on the island of Oahu. On a personal note, Brittany loves to run, hike, go to the beach, and just enjoy being outdoors. She's new to California and the Bay Area, so she's starting to explore our home Bay Area. Brittany will be working on projects like the Long Ridge Parking Feasibility Study for the connection to Eagle Rock and Devil's Canyon, the Prisma Upland Site Cleanup, supporting natural resources on environmental review, and then of course, supporting our planners and engineering construction staff on the Highway 35 multi-use Ridge Trail crossing and the North Ridge Parking Area Study. I would like to ask Brittany to share a few welcome words.
Thank you, Jane. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. As Jane mentioned, I do have a background in private consulting, but I've always wanted to work for an agency like MidPenn. And like she said, I love being outdoors, and I'm really excited to dive into some of these projects and continue to visit a lot of the beautiful preserves that are included in the district. Thank you.
Aloha, Whitney. We're so happy to have you with us.
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Okay, now I will ask our second planner to join, turn on her camera. And this is Matea. Matea is a planner originally from Grass Valley with a background in environmental consulting. She has an undergraduate degree in environmental management and protection with 2 minors in sustainable environments and biology from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. She's worked on managing environmental and land planning components of linear utility projects from preliminary design through construction, performed environmental review, prepared water and land use permitting, and then coordinated environmental review of fire hardening efforts of electrical utilities in Northern California. On a personal note, Matea is an avid equestrian and hiker and loves exploring the trails of the Bay Area. Previously, she had been the president and head coach for the Cal Poly Dressage team and has volunteered for the Sea Otter Savvy. Matea's projects will include the ADA Accessible Path Feasibility Study at Rancho San Antonio, working with our land and facilities and engineering construction. And then the new parking area at Bear Creek Redwoods Preserve, supporting our senior planner, Jared Hart, and senior capital project manager, Scott Reeves on that project. And then supporting the environmental review and compliance work for the Highway 17 wildlife and regional trail crossings and the trail connections. So I'd like to ask Matea to share a few words.
Thanks so much, Jane. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be a part of MidPenn. It's definitely tied together a lot of dreams for me because I've just loved being outdoors, and seeing all the open spaces of the Bay Area has really encouraged me to move here, growing up in such a small town, so close to nature. So it's made it a lot easier to live in such a big city. So I'm just really excited to get involved and bring my skills to something I'm really passionate about. So very excited for what's to come.
Fantastic. Welcome, Matea. So
Yes,
nice.
Thank you.
2 new planners on the staff. It's really exciting, your diverse backgrounds. Welcome, both of you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, and next I believe we have 3 new Rangers. And Matt, are you introducing it?
Well, thank you, Anna. Yeah, I am sort of. And President Christine Tucker and board members. So Matt Anderson, Chief Ranger. And we do have 3 new Rangers, although they were hired last November. They've been away at the Park Ranger Academy. They completed that. They returned in May, and they're currently in the field training program. And our area superintendent, Brad Pennington, who oversees the field training program, is going to provide their introduction. Brad, you're there?
Yes, I am.
Hello, everyone, and very pleased to announce our 3 new Rangers that are about at the halfway mark of their field training program right now. And as Matt said, they've completed a 17-week-long academy, and they're into their 13-week field training program at this point. We hope to have them all through it and starting on their own on August 1st. So the first will be Gonzalo Rozo. Can you please put your camera on, Gonzalo? So Gonzalo is a native Spanish speaker born in Colombia. He graduated from Leland High School right here in the local area, has an AS in fire protection technology from Mission College, and is currently completing his AS in park management from West Valley College. He has completed a lot of relevant training already, including EMT and CPR AED instructor. Gonzalo comes to us from the city of Palo Alto, where he's worked, we'll say, many years. So we don't want to give away how long he's already worked there. But it was a great steal from them. And I kind of was there today and rubbed it in some of his past workers' noses because they were asking about Gonzalo today when we were at the Mitchell Park Center. Upon accepting his final offer of employment, Gonzalo actually told the chief that he was honored to have been chosen to be part of MidPenn's team, and he'll do everything in his power to contribute to MidPenn's goals. Gonzalo is a very engaging, determined individual. We know he's going to succeed. He's a natural ambassador for the district, out there saying hello and smiling and talking to every person he can find. So Gonzalo, if you'd like to say a few words.
Absolutely. And thank you, Brad, for the kind introduction, and hello, everybody. As Brad mentioned, I am extremely happy to be here, and I'm extremely eager to get out there, make a difference, and contribute to this great mission. I feel really welcome, and it's been an amazing experience so far. So looking forward to being part of this amazing group. And thank you so much to everyone for the opportunity.
Thank you, Gonzalo. All right, so for our next person, Madeline Vitti. Go ahead and turn on your camera, Madeline. She does go by Maddie, so everyone knows. Maddie grew up in Walton, New York, graduating from O'Neill High School. She has an AS in liberal arts with math and science from Santa Barbara City College, and she just completed her BS in environmental studies from San Jose State. Upon completion from that, a month later, we shipped her off to an academy, so her school never really ended until now. So she just kind of kept rolling. Maddie actually started as a seasonal ranger aide with us, and through that experience kind of came to know the district and applied and did well through the whole process. She has relevant work experience with the city of Morgan Hill, AmeriCorps, and in customer service positions. She also volunteered with the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and our city forest. Maddie has a lifelong goal to influence as many people as possible to have positive relationships with the environment, use sustainable practices, and help restore the earth. She's a great fit for MidPenn. Maddie?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Maddie. I am super excited to be a ranger. As you see, I maybe here too, I am outdoors right now. So I'm super excited to be a ranger. I'm very happy to be working outdoors, doing something that I really care about, and I'm really excited to be working for MidPenn. So it will be very nice to meet you all in person today.
Thank you, Maddie. And last but not least, Nicholas Bustos. Can you turn on your camera? There he is. So Nicholas grew up in Millbrae, and he now lives in Menlo Park with his wife and 2 children. He has an AA from Foothill College in physical education and is completing his BA in Parks and Recreation and Leisure from San Jose State University. Nicholas work experience includes 10 years with the Millbrae Recreation Department as a recreation leader, 9 years in the hotel and hospitality services. And prior to his hire with us, Nicholas also completed the basic modular police academy level 3 training. Nicholas is also an accomplished Spartan race competitor. And I can say for sure he showed that. He has got the record time for the fitness test for the district with 1.5 miles in 8 minutes and 39 seconds. So he pretty much sprinted through that. Nicholas is accomplished, he's excited to begin his career as a ranger and eager to learn all the aspects of the position. His favorite aspect of the job is resource protection and fire prevention. Nicholas, you like to say a few words?
Hello, everyone. Super excited to be working for MidPenn. This is actually one of my goals since I found out about the position and decided to be a ranger, which is one of the reasons why I joined or did the Post Modular 3 Academy, was to better qualify myself for this position. But yeah, growing up in this area, being on some of the trails, I mean, I love this area. You know, I just want to preserve everything, and I look forward to meeting everybody in person as well. But thank you for having me.
Well,
Thank you,
Gonzalo, Maddie, and Nicholas, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for being on the team. We are looking forward to meeting you in person too.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Well, and thank you all. And that wraps it up for visitor services.
All right, very good. And I think we have one more wonderful employee to welcome this evening. And Hillary, would you do the honors?
Thank you, President Christine Tucker. It's Hillary Stevenson, General Counsel. And I am very pleased to welcome Egan Hill to the district as Assistant General Counsel. Oh, there is Egan. He turned on his camera without me reminding him to do so. Welcome, Egan. Some of you might remember working with him in the district back in 2014 when he served for a period of time as special counsel in the legal department. And I know he's really excited to return to MidPenn to work alongside this professional team of individuals that make MidPenn such a great organization. And he's excited to support preservation and management of public open space. Egan earned his undergrad degree at Columbia University in economics philosophy. He also earned his law degree from Columbia University. And he was in private practice for a number of years, I think about 7 years. But luckily for us and for the public, Egan decided to switch his focus to the public sector. So he got his feet wet at MidPenn back in 2014, and then he's served in municipal law ever since. He served as a senior deputy city attorney for the city of San Jose, where he supported public works, environmental services, and the city auditor. So he has plenty of experience in construction, property transactions, land use and development, and public utilities. And as I said, I know that Egan's excited to return to the district. And a fun anecdote, Egan leads his 2 young sons on mountain bike rides. And so he's a very ambitious guy. Egan, would you like to say a few words to the board?
Yeah, hi everyone. I don't always succeed on those mountain bike rides. Sometimes either my kids or the trails get the best of us. But yeah, as Hillary mentioned, I had a chance to volunteer with the district several years ago. I had a fantastic experience and learned a lot, met a lot of great people. And so I was really excited by the opportunity to come back and rejoin. And I'm just looking forward to kind of getting involved in all the interesting and important work that MidPenn does. So looking forward to meeting everyone.
Wonderful. Well, welcome home, Egan. Thank you. We're so glad to have you with us. So
Yes, very considered. Welcome to all of you. It's fantastic.
absolutely. All right. Okay, that's always just such a great way to start up a board meeting. These bright, happy new faces. All right, we'll move on now to adoption of the agenda. May I please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move. I'll second.
I think we have a motion from Director Riffle and a second from Director Siemens. And a roll call, please.
Director Seer,
Yes.
Director Hassett,
Yes.
Director Holman,
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker,
Yes.
Director Kishimoto,
Yes.
Director Riffle,
Yes.
and Director Siemens.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you. I will move on now to our consent calendar items 1 through 7. Would any member of the board like to have an item pulled from the consent calendar? All right, I don't see any. So may I please have a motion to approve?
Director Seer, I move adoption of the consent calendar.
Okay, thank
I'll second that, but we should also see if there's public comment.
Are there any public comments on the consent calendar? Thank you. Kurt.
President Kirsten Tucker, we did not receive any public comments or requests to speak for any of the consent calendar items.
All right, very good. So we have a motion from Director Seer, a second from Director Riffle, and a roll call, please.
Director Seer,
Yes.
Director Hassett,
Yes.
Director Holman,
Yes.
Director Kishimoto,
Yes.
Director Riffle,
Yes.
Director Siemens,
Yes.
and President Kirsten Tucker.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, very good. Thank you. We will now turn to our first board business item, consideration of the multi-use through trail alignment at Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve. It's wonderful to see many members of the public joining us for this meeting tonight. We look forward to hearing from you. And Anna, would you like to tee up this item, or shall we go straight to Brian?
Actually, go straight to Brian today.
Okay, very good. Brian?
Good evening, Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager. And tonight we're going to be talking about the multi-use trail alignment. It's really exciting that we've made such progress in our phase 2 to get ready to open the east side of the preserve. Bear Creek Open Space Preserve was protected back in 1999, purchased with Post in the Open Space District. It wasn't really until 2014 that we had the financial resources to open it up to the public and do a lot of the natural resource work that was necessary. In 2014, the public passed the Measure AAA, which allowed the district to pursue 25 top priority projects, of which Bear Creek Preserve was one of the really important projects that we've gone after getting done. In 2017, after a long process of public input and a lot of interest, the board approved the Bear Creek Preserve Plan. And one of the major decisions at that time was to include a multi-use trail in the preserve plan. In 2019, the first phase of implementation was completed, and we opened the preserve on the west side. So we now have a parking lot with a little bit of oddity, a parking lot on the east side with a crossing over the road to the west side. And most of the east side is not open yet. But as I mentioned, we're working actively, both our land and facilities department and our special projects trail crews and the engineering, construction, and developing plans to complete all the work that needs to happen before we can open up the phase 2. As part of the preserve plan, one of the items that was discussed widely with a lot of public input was whether bikes should be allowed in the preserve. And after hearing public input from people that were interested in keeping it just an equestrian and hiking preserve, and then also people that were interested in having bicycle access, the board's decision in the preserve plan was to have a multi-use trail that included equestrians, bicyclists, and hikers that would connect from the lower end of the preserve up to the top. I want to be clear to the board and to the public that are here tonight. The decision before the board tonight is not to decide whether bicycles would be allowed in the preserve or whether they would be on a trail that would just solely bicycle use or bicycle and horse use or bicycle and hiking use, and bicycles would be on a separate trail. But the alignment of the multi-use trail that was approved in the preserve plan, that intent is to have both horse, equestrian, bicycle, and hiking use. So tonight, what we'll do is our project manager, Brian Apple, will go over the background investigations of what's been done and why we're looking at several different alignments and the preferred alignment for the board to consider, and then make a decision on whether that is the alignment that should be moved forward to continue having staff work on it. We do have multi-use trails in place in many of our preserves. There's a few preserves that are set aside just for hiking and equestrian use, but most of our preserves allow on many of the trails horses, hiking, and equestrian use. I repeated horse and equestrian use, but allow all three uses. An example of a preserve where all those uses coexist with the nearby stables is Fremont Older Preserve, where we have a stables right next to the preserve, not on district property, but gets heavy horse use and is also very popular with bicyclists. So we believe that we can have a multi-use trail that minimizes conflict, is enjoyable for everyone to use, and most of all is safe for everyone to use. So with that, I will pass it on to Brian Apple, our project manager for the multi-use trail.
Hello, good evening, Board of Directors. My name is Brian Apple, Capital Projects Field Manager, and I am leading the effort on the trail design in the Phase 2 areas of Bear Creek. Jen, should I share my screen with the presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay, will do. All right, sorry, let me back this up. All right, again, thank you, Board of Directors. Good evening to members of the public who are here as well. Again, my name is Brian Apple, Capital Project Field Manager in our Land and Facilities Department. And tonight I'll be talking with you about the efforts to identify an appropriate multi-use trail alignment at Bear Creek Redwoods. So the general manager's recommendation is to review and approve the recommended revised alignment of the multi-use through trail at Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve and the designation of an additional hiking equestrian trail, and consider a phased opening of the multi-use through trail. Brian, do you want me to read this slide, or Director Kirsten Tucker? I can cover this. Members of the public.
Brian, this is District Clerk Jennifer Woodworth. I'm happy to do it really quick, having summarized it several times the last couple of years. So members of the public who want to provide comment on this item, you can do that by going to our website to www.openspace.org/public-comment. And there you have an option to submit a comment form for providing comment for this item or other items on tonight's agenda. You have an option of providing comments in writing that can be of any length to be given to the board, comments to be read into the record up to 250 words, and I will read those into the record, or to provide a request to provide oral comments. And those oral comments are time limited and will be taken during the public comment period. And you will be called on each other in turn. So please go, if you haven't submitted a comment form, please go ahead and go to that website listed at the top of the slide, www.openspace.org/public-comment. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Jen. Great. So to provide a little bit of the planning context related to the Bear Creek Redwoods Preserve Plan, as Brian mentioned during his summary, through the Preserve Plan process, there was the idea of a connector trail linking the Lexington Basin up to the Summit Skyline area through Bear Creek Redwoods. And this trail is really an opportunity to provide cyclists a way to avoid using Bear Creek Road, given the windy nature of that road, sort of limited sight lines and lack of viable shoulder to use that route. And so the language from the preserve plan identifies the regional trail connections. So one being to support the development of a new multi-use trail connection between Lexington Reservoir County Park and northern Bear Creek Redwoods, utilizing the Highway 17 overpass and on the Skyline Summit area via the west side of the preserve. And this would establish a regional trail connection between eastern Bear Creek Redwoods and Summit Road. So potentially cyclists could use the Los Gatos Creek Trail to connect to Alma Bridge Road to Lexington County Park, all the way up through Bear Creek Redwoods using the multi-use trail, and tie in up to the Summit Road area where they have access to various other mid-pen preserves and county and state parks in that corridor. So again, a little bit more planning context related to the Bear Creek Redwoods Preserve Plan. What you can see here is figure 3-1 from that preserve plan document, which identifies the trails plan for Bear Creek Redwoods. And this was developed at a conceptual level, looking at high level information, existing road network, opportunities to extend or expand existing road networks, and very high level conceptual trail alignments for new trail construction. And so the area we're focusing on is this northeast connection or northeast area that we've deemed phase 2. And you can see the double edge purple arrow identifying that connection to the Lexington Basin in the northeast portion of the map. And then you see this double arrow down near for the future connection to the Skyline Summit area. And again, the focus of our discussion tonight is primarily on this northeast portion of the preserve, again, which we've identified as sort of our phase 2 trails area. And through the planning process, there's a quote from the preserve plan stating that the northeastern segment of the multi-use trail beginning at the intersection of Bear Creek Road and Highway 17 interchange will be designed and constructed to avoid established equestrian trails, neighboring properties, unstable geologic features, and other topographic constraints to the greatest extent possible. The conceptual alignment shown on figure 3-1 is therefore subject to change during the design and engineering process. And again, when we're going through and developing our preserve plan documents and some of our site guidance documents, the level of effort we're looking at is very high level. We do preliminary investigations on the site. But as we get into the true trail design and implementation, we take a much closer look on the ground, looking at the geotechnical constraints, the natural resource considerations, engineering considerations, structures necessary to accommodate new trail constructions. We get much more detailed, after we've completed development of a preserve plan and are moving on to implementation of sort of individual project level trails. So the alignment shown on figure 3-1 was definitely very, very conceptual and was supported through high level evaluation as part of the preserve plan effort. As we began to look and prepare for implementation of the phase 2 trail network, and specifically related to the multi-use alignment as envisioned in the preserve plan, we conducted trail scouting with our in-house expert district trail crews, and we identified several constraints to the proposed conceptual alignment. So as part of the process, we bring on a consulting engineering team with biologists and cultural resources expert as part of that team. And so through our in-house district crew trail evaluation, we identified challenges with routing the trail through very steep terrain and very erosive soils, crossing through sensitive resources, in wetland areas like Briggs Creek, and the topographic constraints of that particular canyon to cross. And as part of the consultant evaluation, they identified very similar considerations that we identified. And so some of those challenges and constraints that were determined through the evaluation process is that in looking at the geology of the site, the conceptual alignment was routed through several landslides that were identified. We had 2 significant crossings over Briggs Creek and tributaries to Briggs Creek, one of which was considered infeasible due to the specific landform structures and significant grading effort that would be necessary there. Additionally, there was the proximity to potentially unstable historic bridge, which is shown in this upper right photograph here that crosses Briggs Canyon. We actually looked at repurposing this bridge as an opportunity to sort of avoid some of these sensitive areas. But again, this bridge is very old and not feasible to implement as a crossing and reuse as a crossing because of all the seismic retrofitting that would need to occur. Additionally, the crossings of Briggs Creek and the tributary would require numerous riparian tree removals, and this would result in extensive mitigation requirements. And what we've identified through a lot of our projects is once we're interacting with the riparian canopy and we're removing any riparian tree, the requirement from the agencies like California Department of Fish and Wildlife states that we need to replace those trees at a 6-to-1 ratio. And we need to monitor those trees for 10 years. And we can, there are mitigation requirements up to 10-to-1 for large oak trees. Additionally, we identified unsustainable grades, and this is primarily due to the erosive soils in the area and the local landforms as you descend into Briggs Creek and the other crossing just north of the stables driveway. And as it was identified in the preserve plan, the desirable design width of the multi-use trail was 12 feet. And to implement a 10 to 12 foot trail crossing Briggs Creek, posed some very significant challenges with, substantial retaining walls and other structures to accommodate that design width. So through this process, we looked at alternative alignments. And you can see on this map, I'm showing 3 different alignments, one in purple, which we've identified as our preferred alignment, one in gold, which is a feasible alignment, however, it's not preferred, and the red alignment, which is a portion of the conceptual multi-use trail that has been deemed infeasible. So for the purple alignment, this route is our preferred alignment. It uses primarily existing roads, that are 10 to 12 feet wide. And this substantially avoids sensitive resources in the area. There is some segment of new trail construction on the northern portion of this alignment, but predominantly utilizes the existing road network in Bear Creek Redwoods. Now, the gold alignment that's shown is a feasible alternative that we worked with our consulting team to look at. This does follow segments of the preserve plan alignment. It still crosses the creek near that historic bridge and has some substantial challenges in implementing sustainable alignment, but is something that could be feasible, but again, is not preferred from our perspective because of the adjacent resources and impacts to riparian habitat and proximity to that historic bridge structure. One significant issue also is that a segment of it utilizes the stables driveway and the entry point into the trail network, and so would route cyclists right onto the primary entrance that the stables would utilize to access the preserved trail network. And then the red portion of the alignment is what was identified in the preserve plan alignment. And we've identified these segments in red as infeasible. And this is primarily due to the steep cross slopes in the area and the erosive soils that dominate the Briggs Creek Canyon and the tributary to Briggs Creek. The creek crossings, again, are constrained by that local topography, with the northern crossing, again, shown by that red X, considered to be infeasible because of those topographic constraints and riparian impacts. So the preferred alignment, again, is utilizing that 10 to 12 foot road, existing road network. And our crew is out there working on improving that road. And that's as part of, because portions of this road will serve as our all-season patrol access route and will serve as part of our trail network as part of the phase 2 project. And so you can see on the left-hand photo, this is a segment of the road as it descends towards Briggs Creek. You can see in the center photo, this is where the trail or road crosses through Briggs Creek. We are, as part of the phase 2 project, next summer, a vehicle rated bridge will be installed across this, what is currently a wet ford, to ensure that we're minimizing our impacts on water quality in this area as we increase our patrols and increase our visitor usage. And then on the far right side, you can see a segment as you move north along the existing road network. And this is an area that's already been improved from a grading and drainage standpoint, with a section of rock that's been laid down and compacted, again, serving as part of our all-season patrol access route. As this project has moved forward, we do meet quarterly with the Friends of Bear Creek Stables and the stables concessionaire to discuss various issues related to the stables and inform the stables folks of ongoing projects at Bear Creek and to receive feedback from this group. So some of the concerns that were identified during our quarterly meeting and dating back to 2021 was that there is a variance from what was shown on the preserve plan public access map. Additionally, there's concern that the trail alignment overlaps with trails frequently accessed by equestrians. And then we received inquiry on a venue for public input for this variance of the multi-use trail from the preserve plan. And so we've been communicating with the Friends of Bear Creek Stables frequently and have been keeping them aware of where we are on this project. As part of the concerns that have been raised by the Friends group, we also looked at the opportunity to try to minimize the user group conflicts. And so one opportunity that we have identified was to extend the Briggs Creek Trail, which is shown here in gold. The existing trail is shown by the dash line, and then the extension is from tiers off of this dash line up to this gate BCO4 in our parking area. So this would provide equestrians and hikers the opportunity to avoid an additional 0.3 mile of the multi-use trail from the current configuration. And this would utilize the legacy road in the area for cost-effective solution, again, minimizing impacts on natural resources at the site. Additionally, we've identified operational strategies to minimize the conflict between the user groups. And some of these operational improvements would be expanded trail brushing. This would allow people to see whether equestrians or bicyclists are approaching them. Additionally, adding, as part, this area isn't open to the public, so it doesn't have our standard informational and regulatory signage. So that would be part of the project, is to implement a sign plan for this phase 2 area. And we would include appropriate informational and regulatory signage to make visitors aware of the trail courtesies in the area and regulations. And one thing we're currently working on right now is the proper grading and shaping of the trail to improve the safety of the trail and provide for best opportunities for line of sight and improved safety. We've worked on minimizing some of the sharper turns and opening up some of these areas to enhance safety. And then additionally, there's an adaptation component to this. So part of that would be to monitor and assess the trail use once open to bicycles. And this would then in turn require evaluation of the results and discussion with the Friends group to identify if additional trail or operational enhancements are necessary to improve the safety and the visitor experience. Additionally, another component for consideration before the board this evening is a phased opening of the multi-use trail. So What you see here is the entirety of the multi-use trail as envisioned, with the modifications of the alignment in the northeast portion or the phase 2 portion. You can see that shown in purple on the map, and then you can see the gold segment, which is existing trail other than the connection, the short segment of trail near the connection to Summit Skyline area. Through our investigations with a traffic safety consultant, there were substantial challenges identified for the trail connection, again, at the southern trail connection at Bear Creek and Summit Road. And so that project was deferred to focus on the northeast trailhead, again, shown in the purple double arrow, because of the connection to the Los Gatos Creek Trail and the potential linkage there. And so our engineering and construction department is focusing on that design and permitting effort. And there is additionally an FYI memo that's before the board this evening that discusses that particular project and the challenges associated with that. So what we've considered is a phased opening of the multi-use trail. And so the first phase would be to open the purple segment upon completion of the phase 2 trail network, and then to have a second phase that would open after the Summit Skyline traffic safety improvements have been completed. So this purple alignment would, in the connection and the phased approach to the multi-use trail would allow the district to enhance its multimodal access to the preserve. It would allow cyclists and hikers to access the preserve trail network via the enhanced improvements over Highway 17, the trailhead access point there, and then either hike or bike to the upper parking area to park their bike there and then access the trails on the west side of the preserve. Alternatively, the multi-use opening could be deferred until the upper trail connection is completed, but that's likely going to occur after 2026 due to the substantial challenges that have been identified and the need to add this particular, the Summit trail connection to a future action plan and budget process. So again, the general manager's recommendation is to review and approve the recommended revised alignment of the multi-use through trail at Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve and the designation of an additional hiking equestrian trail, and to consider a phased opening of the multi-use through trail. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can answer.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much for that thorough overview of this complex trail situation at Bear Creek. Right now, directors, I think we'll take questions for Brian. We have many members of the public waiting to speak, so we'll hold our deliberations until after we've heard from the public. But questions first, Kurt.
Great, thank you, Zoe. And Brian, thank you for that excellent presentation and the board memo. A lot of thought has gone into this. So I'm just really excited we're moving into phase 2. I echo Brian Malone's comments. We're moving into this phase. And I definitely support the multi-use regional trail concept, especially as it goes through the Redwoods. However, just to set context for my questions, I am concerned about mixing bikes and horses so close to our public stables. So as I think most people on the board know, I am an equestrian, and I have ridden most of these trails during my many visits to Bear Creek Stables. So I'm pretty familiar with the layout there. So Brian, my first question is, could you remind us the expected kind of bike usage that we would have, because gosh, this is kind of opening up finally, bicycles being able to go from the St. Joseph's and Lexington area up through the preserve, at least to the Alma area bike parking and then on. But in the short term, is this kind of almost like a commuter route, that people would be just kind of moving through, and any idea about numbers and so on? Could just kind of give us give us a sense of how this will be used by the biking community?
Yeah, I can start by attempting to answer that and maybe let Anna or Brian, provide some thoughts as well. I mean, I think given the proximity to the urban environment, the town of Los Gatos and, connections beyond through the Los Gatos Creek Trail, is a very popular route. And I know a lot of people access St. Joseph's Hill and Sierra Azul in that way. So I could see it as being something that is a draw in that sense. I see it as being less of a draw for folks to drive to the preserve parking area and ride this trail, especially as part of a phased opening that may be slightly different once you have the entire trail open to the public. But that would be my expectation. I mean, I think we'll also see probably shifts once our Highway 17 Bay Area Ridge Trail connection is made and folks have the opportunity to connect almost directly from Los Gatos Creek Trail up to El Sereno over the highway overcrossing. So I think initially when it's open ahead of the Highway 17, I could see it, attracting people who haven't had the opportunity to ride there. But it is fairly limited too. There's no loop opportunities. I do see it as primarily folks using it to ride to the parking area and potentially hike or explore the west side on foot. And so I'll let Brian or Anna also provide their thoughts and context for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to predict exactly the mix of uses and the popularity. It is, per the board direction in the preserve plan, just a through trail. So it doesn't provide that network of trails that we know is really attractive to all types of visitors, including bicyclists that you might find at Corte Madera or Purisma or Fremont Older. So probably with the initial opening, likely traveling to the preserve, exploring that connection from the Lexington Basin. And, potentially in the long run, when there are loop opportunities that connect with trails at the top and at the bottom, which is really relatively long range, more use. But I wouldn't expect it to be extremely popular. For instance, the Mount Humnum Trail, great trail experience, but probably because it's a one-way out and back or a one-way combination with Mount Humnum Road, the bicycle use has been lighter than we initially expected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was going to add, this is a through trail. It's a one-way trail, and there are no loop opportunities within the preserve for bicyclists. And so the interest, I do believe, will be limited to those who are living in the area and surrounding areas, desiring to utilize the network to then connect to trails in the Lexington Basin area and further beyond. Right. So it's more of a multimodal through trail, if you will, that maybe encourages people to access trail networks beyond Bear Creek Redwoods via bicycle versus driving there.
Got it. Okay, thanks. That's very helpful. My next question was actually, I'm going to let our public, because that is the equestrian usage for this area. I think I know, but I think our commenters probably will fill us in on that. Brian, back to you. Is the seasonal implications of this, as far as kind of trail conditions and especially of that road, and also, as I saw in one of your pictures, that portions of that road are rocked, and that makes me kind of concerned because bikes on loose gravel, slowing for horses usually doesn't work out well. So could you kind of comment on the seasonality and the surface and so on?
Yeah, so the intent is for this to be an all-season route. We have what is our all-season patrol access route, which utilizes a portion of this route that's been identified, but allows our patrol and emergency resources to access through a gate near our parking area and into Bear Creek Stables year-round. And that was a request through our visitor services just to ensure that there is that circulation from an all-season perspective. The trail will receive rocking, and it won't be a gravel, it'll be a compacted aggregate base, very similar to what's on, it'll basically be the same treatment as what's on the west side of the preserve. And so that material has a binder, it's a lime treated aggregate base that binds really well. So it's not similar to other sites where we have, in some areas we've had drain rock in the past at the surface that creates a more gravelly feel to the road. So this would be more compacted and be more suitable to supporting, adequate slowing as compared to something that's lined with a gravel product.
Got it. And then if my colleagues will bear with me, I just have two other questions. Could you go to attachment to the map? Brian, is that possible? Yeah. My first question is about the future parking lot that is along Bear Creek Road. Now, how are we getting, what's our plan to get people, I'm assuming that's going to be equestrians and bikers and hikers from there into the preserve. Would they utilize that yellow trail?
Yeah, so the yellow trail is an existing trail. And so what is shown as part of this multi-use trail, that segment in yellow, based on our preferred alignment, again, shown in purple, that yellow trail would not be designated for multi-use at this point. I think it would be, I'll defer to Brian and Anna on how we would approach the future designation, whether it's appropriate to have folks who would be using their bikes at the preserve to park there if there wasn't the multi-use trail fronting that or connecting to that parking lot. So I think it would be a decision on whether to link that to the multi-use trail. And Brian, I don't know if you want
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, ultimately, all these decisions are board decisions, but that is one element that you would likely lose if you have the multi-use trail shown in the preferred alignment, is that parking lot would not be available to bicyclists. So then bicyclists would have two options for coming to the preserve: the multimodal option, which is really kind of our preferred option, and then the coming to the existing parking lot. So it kind of flips. So in the preserve plan, the conceptual alignment, there's a multi-use shared trail adjacent to Bear Creek Road. And then there's some loop and trail opportunities on the other side of the preserve that are available just to hiking and equestrians. And that gets flipped so that that area next to Bear Creek Road will then not have any bicycle access. And if that's the board's desire to continue that into the future, when that parking lot is developed, that parking lot would not be accessible for bicyclists to stage and ride.
Okay, great. And sorry, my last question, I promise. Brian, and then back to you. Could you repeat again why you are not thinking about that yellow trail for bicycle use? Was it expense?
I mean, there is an expense. Again, per the design criteria set forth in the preserve plan, the intent was to have the multi-use trail be a 12-foot width trail. And the challenges of crossing the Briggs Creek Canyon, especially, really drive up costs in that area. So just this segment of trail, as was estimated by our consulting engineer, basically to make this link just to the other side of the stables, was $1.6 million. But again, that's at that 12-foot criteria.
Yeah, if that were 6 foot instead or something like that, I would assume that would be less than, right?
It would be less. I think the challenge still is that the trail wouldn't adhere to our typical design guidelines and would be a significantly more challenging trail to maintain, given the underlying erosive nature of the soils and steep grades especially crossing Briggs Creek. And again, with some identified landslides on the flank of the southern flank of the stables area, makes aligning it somewhat challenging. I think the other thing to note is that it utilizes the stables driveway to avoid this northern crossing that's shown here, and then ties in at the same point where the equestrians access the trail network, just where the kind of quasi-public parking area is as you enter the stables off the driveway.
I see.
I mean, in short, it's much more expensive, and plus it has the faults of the other trail, if you will, of being close to the equestrian access.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for my colleagues for your patience with me.
All right, thank you, Director Riffle. Director Hassett.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, Kurt, you did ask several of the points that I was curious about, but let me follow up on one of them. Brian, you mentioned that the soils are very erosive in this area. And I'm just wondering what kind of monitoring we're going to be doing and to see, and are the, is where the sedimentation might occur into the creeks, is that going to be an issue with fisheries downstream, or what are we doing to, and I know we're going to harden the trail itself, but with both equestrian and mountain bike and hiking, hard to guesstimate how much damage, potential damage there could be, depending upon the usage. And I'm just wondering how that's going to be monitored and how we're going to regulate it if it gets to be a real problem.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to kind of start the answer on that question. I think where we have our preferred alignment alternative, the purple line again, what we're doing is we have the trail crosses Briggs Creek, which is a perennial creek, and currently it's an existing wet ford crossing. So our patrol vehicles are driving, accessing it through the creek, and there's another seasonal tributary that is a ford crossing as well. And so as part of the phase 2 trail project, we'll be installing, our engineering and construction department will be installing vehicle rated bridges over those crossings to remove the usage from actually interacting with the wetted channel. So that's one piece that we'll be doing. If the trail were to be routed along this gold alignment, that's where the erosion issues are more significant, I would say. And again, if that piece were to be implemented, we would ensure that the design is such that it would minimize erosion in that area. But again, it's more challenging to mitigate those issues in that Briggs Canyon area because of how steep the slopes are, how confined the areas are that are suitable to actually route a trail. And so, as part of, in a situation like that, we would ensure that our land facility staff does trail checks after storm events, and they identify issues that are ongoing with erosion, drainage issues, trail structure issues, and those kind of things are documented and included now in our work order asset management system, CityWorks. And so we would be identifying and sharing that information with our natural resources department. I think one thing to note is that due to Lexington Dam, there's no anadromy up here. So there's no, we don't have steelhead. We do have landlocked trout and other special status species that we do need to protect from sedimentation, plus just protecting the waterways themselves. And so those would be some of the measures that we would take to mitigate sedimentation of these waterways. Additionally, as part of the phase 2 project, we are doing a reach of stream channel restoration just below the stables, where we're going to pull out an old failed culvert and lay the banks back and restore the stream channel itself as part of the project.
Brian, this is Anna Ruiz, General Manager. Is it fair to say that although we would try to design that the yellow alignment as much as possible to reduce sedimentation, that the potential for erosion is much higher along that alignment than the preferred alignment?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say that. I think it'd be tough, just given the constraints in the area, to mitigate the sedimentation such that it would be non-existent. So.
Okay, thank you. That was a good
All
answer.
right. Thank you, Director Hassett. Director Siemens.
Yeah, could you go to the other map that showed the preferred alignment where the intersections to the existing trails are?
Sure. Is this the map that you?
Yes. Okay, now could you kind of show with your pointer where the new trail would intersect with the existing trails?
Sure. So the preferred alignment, again, is shown in purple here. We have what's been referred to as the public stables loop trail through here. Again, the stables is
right
location. So the primary access point for the stables is from here. There's the public, again, sort of quasi-public parking area here, where this is the main entrance to the trail network for the stables and equestrian and borders access. And so again, you have this loop here. So there's the overlap on this segment potentially.
Okay, and where's the other overlap?
And so if they were to come in this direction, there's overlap here along this segment, and then they can tie in to the Briggs Creek Trail, potentially all the way up to Gate BCO4 and the Alma parking area.
Now, okay, so the problem that we could potentially have in the future is going to be the overlap areas. And I think that's probably the part that's got as far as I can understand, that's the part that creates the most concern. So I guess we're talking about, well, we'll go ahead and do it in the future. If we have a problem, we can see about how to fix it. Well, I would assume that's a whole other project. And if we look at it now and say, oh, well, we already know we're going to have a problem. So how about we fix it now? So the question I have is, can we do a parallel trail along that overlap area that's just for bicycles, something that's like 3 or 4 feet wide?
I think there's challenges with that for sure. I mean, it's creating the same. You're basically replicating that level of disturbance.
I understand that, but that's what we would have to do if we had a problem in the future and we had to fix it. I don't see any other way to fix it short of a helicopter to pick people up and set them down.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's. It really depends on what segments are creating an issue as far as the user group interactions. But I will maybe allow Anna or Brian to speak to this.
Yeah, I mean the overlap sections as you spoke to it. I mean, there's and it depends what you're doing. Is the equestrian just doing a loop below the stables? There is a loop that you can avoid all bicycle access. Are they traveling up to the Alma College area and then to the other side of the preserve? The upper part of the preserve is on the west side of the preserve is going to be a lot of overlap with the multi-use trail. That's construction that's already done and improvements that are already done. So you would be sharing trail on the other side of the preserve, and we can mitigate it in a variety of ways that we've talked about today. And there would be adaptive management before going to building entirely separate trails. But if there was a segment that was, particularly we were having issues where it would certainly be feasible on some sections to potentially do a trail that was immediately parallel. The real tough areas would be those areas where you have the creek crossings, where unless you're going to do a separate crossing, you would be putting the traffic back onto the bridges at least.
Well, I guess my concern is primarily overlapping with the existing trails that the people are already using. And that's those two or three short sections. And it just seems to me like maybe we should spend the extra money and go ahead and make a parallel single track and direct the bikes to go that way. I didn't realize this whole thing was going to be that wide. When we originally adopted the preserve plan, my thought was, we were going to build a fairly narrow trail for bicycles only that would carry everybody through the stables and up to the summit without being necessarily multi-use. But this looks fine, except for the overlap areas, which you can't totally get away from potential interactions, but I'm concerned primarily about the areas that are those overlap areas where a lot of new users and a lot of existing people that are used to using all that and I think we ought to figure out something better than the overlap.
Yeah, and just for clarity's sake, the adopted preserve plan calls for a multi-use trail with equestrian, bicycle, and hiking use, and because of that, calls for a wider trail standard. Brian, could you go back to the slide where you showed the diagram? Because that's the adopted standard for the preserve, not necessarily for the entire district. But so the figure 3.2a is the adopted trail standard, and not always feasible to do. So there are sections are in work that's already been constructed, that's been constructed a little bit narrow, but that was the plan that the board adopted.
What's on the screen is not a map.
I'm not talking about the map. I'm talking about the figure 3.2a, which is a trail section cross section, and identifies a hiker, a bicyclist, and an equestrian, and what the trail standard is for that, which is 12 feet wide.
My apologies, Brian.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to make that clear, because it's not that is what was identified in the preserve plan, and it would be, if there was a board interest in discussing an option of a narrow bicycle only or bicycle hiking use, that would be something that you would need to give staff direction to come back to the board with, because it's not, as I mentioned earlier, kind of trying to set the frame. This meeting's decision is to look at the alignment of the multi-use trail, which is the standard that's identified in the preserve plan.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Director Siemens, do you have any further questions?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? I had one. Brian, would you go back? I think it's to slide 7. That one. Well, it's 10. All right, so I am looking at attachment 3 in the staff report, and I'm not seeing the little segment in that connects to the proposed northeast trailhead that's in yellow. I'm not seeing that in the staff report. What is that?
Sorry, this segment here?
Yeah.
The dash line, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, so that one was, I probably should have taken it off of this map, but that was an area that was identified as infeasible. You can see that little blue polygon there. And so I did adapt the attachment in the staff report. But this is a segment that's our existing disc line that we were going to utilize as a trail alignment. However, through our natural resource investigation, this area was identified and delineated as a wetland and is now, I believe, part of a future wetland restoration project. And so we've shifted the trail away from that area to avoid impacts to that sensitive area.
All right, great. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. Okay. I believe we are now ready to turn to our members of the public. And are there public comments for this item?
President Christine Tucker, we do have quite a few public comments. If you can give me a moment just to share my screen correctly. Just a moment. Okay. So just to reiterate to the members of the public, we will be going through public comment. I will be calling on those who requested to provide oral comments first, and then we will go to the, I'll read out those who sent in written comments to be read into the record. And so we are going to have a 2-minute time limit. Is that correct, President Christine Tucker?
That is correct.
Okay. And so give me just a moment. I do have on the screen again, if you have not already submitted a public comment form or request to provide oral comments, I do have that website at the top.
And just to reiterate, we will not be calling attendees that have their hands up. You do need to actually go through the website, the public comment process that's on the screen now.
Thank you. And I do apologize in advance, anyone whose name I mispronounce. My last name is Woodworth and people mispronounce it all the time. So I have my apologies. So our first person to provide oral comment will be Jim Van Gogh in Sunnyvale. And I want to thank our deputy clerk for helping me with the unmuting process. So each member of the public, you will be allowed to unmute yourself. You can unmute, and then I will start the clock once you begin providing comment, and then you will be muted again at the end of 2 minutes. So go ahead, Mr. Van Gogh.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Jim Van Gogh again from Sunnyvale. I appreciate the time allowing me to speak. One comment about, this I think was designed to be a multi-use trail, and because of the 12-foot width of that trail in the vast majority, I really don't see any conflict between users, the various users on that trail. I mean, I've been to many other trails like Arrastradero, et cetera. And when that trail is 12 feet wide, I mean, I don't see any conflict anyway, even on the single track trails. But I think with that wide of a trail, it would be perfectly good for multi-use. So that was my first kind of thought. And the second one, I don't know if this is going to be talked about in a second forum or not, but I don't understand why there's a consideration for delaying the use of the other part of the trail. I guess that's the Alma Trail till a later date or a phase 2. Is it just a consideration for crossing at Skyline? And if that is the case, could that just be mediated by restricting access to Skyline at the top? So if there could be some discussion around that before a decision is made, and maybe some additional time allowances for comment on that area, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Gogh. The next public comment I have for oral comment is Helen Midgard in Mountain View. Ms. Midgard, you may unmute yourself.
Yes.
You do have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm really quite shocked at this presentation. I had written up a presentation which is thrown out the window because I had no idea that it was all a done deal. I have been a boarder at Bear Creek Stables for 25 years, and I consider myself an accomplished trail rider. I ride on my own, and my first horse was a stallion. But with all of that, I've had several accidents. Nobody who isn't a trail rider knows what it's like for your horse to see something that startles it. You feel that horse tense underneath you. You can feel it gathering itself ready to bolt, because that's what horses do. They are prey animals. They react with flight. 12 feet wide trail is no good. 12 feet wide, they'll just jump that trail, go off into the blue, wherever. And then you got to either bail off the horse or go with it. And that's just the way horses are. And I think that Kurt knows that. I think Pete was outlining those overlap trails. They are a problem. there's going to be a problem. We have a lot of people at Bear Creek Stables that are young children that ride, young people. We've just started summer camp. Summer camp right now is for kids from 8 to 12 years old. And they go out, this is their first time for some of them, riding a horse. At the end of the week, they get to do a trail ride. How do you think they're going to react when they see a bunch of bikers coming? Just because the bikers are more of them and they've got more voice doesn't mean they should dominate all the trails. The trails that you've given us that are available without bikes are like tiny. You could ride those trails in 15 minutes. I'm done.
Thank you. And our next member of the public providing oral comment is Craig Gleason. Mr. Gleason, you may unmute yourself and you do have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'd like to comment in support of the Friends of Bear Creek and encourage the board and staff to consider an alternative to the staff recommendation. A key goal at Bear Creek was to have most of the eastern part provide a serene and bike-free environment that would be valued by many trail users and their families. The original plan for the multi-use connection was consistent with that goal, as it would keep bikes out of the core of the trails on the east side. The proposed change doesn't just impact this one trail, it'll fundamentally change the preserve for all users who wanted that experience. And I think we should expect the multi-use trail to be very popular once it's a through trail with cyclists, because it's going to be the only off-road connection to the summit area for miles around. And many people do big loops in that area. The plan for the multi-use route has always been built on these two assumptions. First, that all bike legal trails in the preserve need to be open to equestrians. And second, that those trails should be road width. And we should challenge both of those assumptions. The proposed alignment can be used for equestrians as well as hikers who prefer it. And in addition to that, we could provide a narrow hiking biking trail from the current parking lot down to the Highway 17 interchange. That path, as Pete pointed out, only needs to be 2 to 4 feet wide and can be designed to provide a good experience and safe interaction for hikers and cyclists. A really successful example is the Emma McCrary Trail in Santa Cruz. It sees over 100,000 trips per year by hikers, runners, and cyclists. That hiking biking trail could use parts of the alignments that were considered, but it has much more design flexibility as it would be narrow. So I think other options would be opened up. And certainly a narrow trail alignment can overcome technical challenges that are insurmountable at road width. So it's cheaper, provides better experiences, and I'd strongly encourage you to consider these other options. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next member of the public to provide oral comment is Katia Wick in San Jose. Ms. Wick, you can unmute yourself and you have 2 minutes.
Yes, hi, my name is Katia Wick. I'm a boarder at Bear Creek Stables and have been riding on the trails at Bear Creek Preserve for many years. I don't have a trailer. I'm dependent on the trail system at Bear Creek. Let me start by saying that I'm very much in support of opening all of Bear Creek Preserve to the public. It's public land and it should be accessible to all. I also know that most bikers are very responsible and slow down and get out of the way. But given how steep the trails at the preserve are and how many sharp turns those trails have, it just takes one irresponsible biker to create a very dangerous situation. Compared to other trail systems that have been brought up as examples where bikers and horseback riders get along, the trails at Bear Creek usually have a steep slope up on one side and a steep slope down on the other side. So there's really not much room to go anywhere if it comes close to a collision. I'm therefore afraid that the multi-use trail will de facto become a single-use trail for bikers only, similar to, for example, the John Nicholas Trail. My children have learned to ride with the Pony Corps ponies, and I'm still introducing families to this wonderful program. Taking a walk on the trails with the ponies and the children is one of the highlights for all the Pony Corps families. Going forward, I could not with a good conscience recommend to the families to use the multi-purpose trail in the way it is proposed right now. These are often parents who have only become familiar with horses through the co-op, and their children are still small and would be really scared if their little pony starts to spook because of a bike that comes into view unexpectedly. The only bike-free segment for those beginner families would be a trail up and then down again on a very steep hill and a tiny loop on top of the hill with a good portion of it going along Bear Creek Road. I really hope that you will consider our plea for a separate trail that can be avoided by hikers and equestrians who would not feel safe sharing the trail with bikers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wick. Our next public commenter is Mike Bashu.
Unmute. There we are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I went down to Bear Creek to the Alma parking lot the other day just to try and get an experience of it. It was one of my first times into the preserve. And one of the things that I would like to see a GIS survey done is a little slope overlay that does basically less than 4%, 4 to 8% grades, 8 to 12, and greater than 12. I think it will be eye-opening to the board of directors to see this, and I, as a person in the public, would love to see it. Alma Trail starts out on after you cross the road at plus 20, and you know that's supposed to be a horse option trail. I hiked the whole 5 miles of it, and the top is very, very nice, but everything in between is very steep. So very much concerned about that. I think the Alma Trail is the extension. And if you put bikes on there at a 20% or a 15% grade, for the public, I think you were going to have problems. Alma parking lot was totally jammed full. Adding more parking there brings more people into the preserve. I would like to see equestrian parking there to be able to go up and use it if it's an equestrian friendly facility, and just a general statement of parking. I come back to the statement. I have not been able to walk the proposed trail alignment. Time just hasn't happened for me, and the request has not been put in. But if the slopes are more than 4 or 8%, I think mixing multi-use in this type of a preserve is a high risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bashu. So the next commenter we have is Nancy Cole in Los Gatos. Ms. Cole, you can unmute yourself and you do have 2 minutes. Ms. Cole, are you
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You do have 2 minutes.
Thank you. In respect for the work that the staff has done, I'm urging that we make an effort to keep the bikes near the Bear Creek Road and keep the bikes and the people traveling through from being on the east side of the preserve where the existing trails are now. Those trails will be a benefit to not only equestrians, but to the families and the hikers that come into the Alma College parking area. The staff has offered to clear line of sight and do trail brushing. That could just encourage the bikes to go faster. And I'm also asking if, in regard to these decisions, can we please have the community involved in the evaluating project, particularly the Friends of Bear Creek Stables? While we don't have motorized bikes on the preserve today, in the future, they may find their way onto the preserve. And then we have even more danger if we have bikes on the east side of the preserve. So I'm very much urging that we go back and find a way to have a narrower trail in proximity to the Bear Creek Road and keep the existing trails open exclusively for hikers, families, and equestrians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. The next commenter we have is Sue Landesh in Los Gatos. You can unmute yourself and you do have 2 minutes. Ms. Landesh?
Hi there, thank you.
Hi there, you do have 2 minutes.
I had a presentation, but instead what I'd like to do is speak to some of the points that were made in the meeting that I wasn't aware of. And there was some examples used of other parks that have shared use, but I'd like to mention a few examples that you could research of parks that have chosen to separate the multimodal benefits. One is Glenwood Preserve in Scotts Valley. All the hikers can hike the whole park. Bicyclists can use one side of it, horses can use the other side. And that's because of the mountain terrain, the single trails, the hills, the switchbacks, the things that limit visibility and add speed for the bikers. Number 2 is Rancho San Antonio. We ride that on our horses, and I've never seen a bike there, so I'm guessing that there's access limited there. Number 3 is Demonstration Forest up here on Summit Road. Anyone who's been up here on a weekend knows how packed that is with bikers, and it would be completely unreasonable for someone to ride a horse in that area safely. I'd like to make the point that Bear Creek, being so close to Los Gatos, could be a Rancho San Antonio in the sense of families flooding to that park for daily hikes and outings, weekend hikes and outings. And if you have bikes, racing down those trails, that's just not safe. The point was made that this trail would not be used as a loop trail for the bikers. Instead, it would be out and back, which then doubles the traffic on that trail. That point wasn't made, so I wanted to draw attention. And then there is the point that horse trail maintenance is pretty low cost. I mean, I don't know that Bear Creek has had a lot of maintenance in the last 50 years, and people are safely riding their horses there. As soon as we add bikes, that's going to increase the cost on that huge long loop that you're projecting instead of maybe a shorter, more direct path. And then the elephant in the closet is the e-bikes, which we all know that, people are trying to figure out what's the right balance of e-bikes on these trails, whether.
Thank you, Ms. Landesh. Your 2 minutes are up. The next commenter we have is from Karen Enns in Sunnyvale. And Ms. Enns, I don't see you on the list. Ms. Enns, if you're here, could you please raise your hand so we can allow you to unmute? Okay, I do not see that. I will check again later. The next commenter we have is from Carla Bowen in Los Gatos. Ms. Bowen, you may unmute yourself, and you do have 2 minutes. You are currently muted. I'm muted for a moment. Ms. Bowen? You can unmute yourself. Okay, we will come back to you as well. The final request we had for oral comment is from Diane Levine in Palo Alto. And don't see her on the list either. Okay, so we can come back to those oral comments in just a little bit, and I can go ahead and move forward with the comments to be read into the record. So if you can give me just a moment to open those. Takes just a moment. Okay, oh wait, it's not done, sorry. Okay, the first commenter I have is from Jill Houter in Los Gatos. It states, as a member of the equestrian community for the last 50 years and also a former trainer instructor at Bear Creek Stables, I wish to voice my concerns about the trail system that you approved for equestrians. I know you wish to add bicycles at this time. There is a very large likelihood that injuries/accidents will occur when bikes and horses share trails like the ones in the preserve. Blind corners and steep terrain where speed might be needed will add to surprise encounters and accidents. Please consider leaving the equestrian trail as it is not a very large area and not needed for the bicycle riders. Sincerely, Jill Howder. The next commenter is Heather Shoup in Los Gatos. It states, I support multi-use trails where they can be safely configured. Wide fire trails are a good example of safe shared trails at Wilder Ranch State Parks, where I ride patrol as part of the Mounted Assistance Unit. Single track trails should be designated for horse/hiker only or bike only to avoid accidents and injuries. Safety first, please. The next comment is from Devin Bergert in San Jose. It states, hello, my fellow equestrians and I would greatly appreciate keeping bicycle access in Bear Creek Preserve limited to one trail. The preserve backs up to Bear Creek Stables and provides trail access to equestrians of all ages, including children. If bike access is increased across the park, it will only be a matter of time before an injury or collision between bike and horse occur. Bicycles are quiet and quick and cause unnecessary spooking and tense horses. The trails are often used for horses in training who are young and inexperienced, and by young children and elderly folks who are simply trying to enjoy their horse in California. Bear Creek Preserve, for now, provides a safe opportunity to do just that. Please keep the bike access limited to one trail for the safety of the horses, the riders, and the bicyclists. At the end of the day, we are all trying to get home safely. The next comment is from Henry Pastorelli in Los Altos. It states, I have reviewed agenda item 8, and I would like to express my concern that creating an exclusive equestrian trail at the request of an equestrian advocacy group speaks to exclusiveness and elitism. Again, mountain bikers get the short end of the stick on a second-class fire road trail. Your own document counter-argues and states Fremont Older is an example of a preserve where no equestrian/cyclist accidents have occurred in 10 years. You are doing a disservice to Mid-Penn by corralling cyclists to specific preserves such as ECDM and being beholden to a specific user group. Animosity and conflicts will only increase. I ask you to reconsider by opening one trail all at once and sooner than 2026. Thanks for listening. The next comment is from Jerry Wittenauer in Los Altos Hills. It states, good evening. My name is Jerry Wittenauer, living in Los Altos Hills, an equestrian and frequent rider on the beautiful and extensive trail network that is maintained by Mid-Penn. I am providing comments here as representative of the Equestrian Trail Riders Action Committee, ETRAC, related to agenda item 8, consideration of the multi-use through trail alignment at Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve. We are in full support of the Friends of Bear Creek Stables and their concerns and desires to segregate the equestrian trails from the mountain bike approved trails. Specifically, we support their request to A, do not approve multi-use trail designation for the existing trails on the east side of the preserve. B, create and designate a new trail for bikers/hikers in proximity to Bear Creek Road. And C, maintain the existing trails on the east side for hikers, families, and equestrians. Please give due consideration to the alternative recommended by the Friends of Bear Creek Stables. Thank you. The next comment is from Kristen Reichmuth in Campbell. It states, according to the International Mountain Bicycling Association, while hiker-cyclist conflicts provoke most land access battles, chance encounters between horses and bicycles pose a far greater threat of injury and death. A horse by design is a nervous, cautious beast. Mountain bikers are more or less risk takers. When these two very different users meet unexpectedly on the trail, the results are sometimes disastrous. Unfortunately, I am very familiar with people and horses that have been severely injured and have even died. With that, equestrian and bicycle trails must be separate. The existing trails in proximity to Bear Creek Stables and throughout the east side of the preserve to be exclusively for the use of hikers, families, and equestrians. The intent is to maintain the serenity of the preserve. While evaluations presented by Mid-Penn staff indicate that a separate trail is infeasible, it is highly recommended to look to future high volume use when the preserve opens to the public. Multi-use trails are frequently not safe for hikers, families, and equestrians. So while they are all welcome to participate, many don't use the trails due to unsafe conditions. Times have changed. It is looking into the future with progressive planning to create separate trails for a most enjoyable user experience for all. The next comment is from Karen Izzo in San Jose. It states, want to express my support in building a connector trail for cyclists. I have hiked that trail at Bear Creek entrance many times, and it is scary how fast the bikes go by the hikers on the downhill. Sometimes not enough time to move out of the way. If they have their own trail, that would be ideal. I am also a cyclist, so I would appreciate that when I go riding. Thank you. The next comment is from Elizabeth Sharkey in Los Gatos. It states, Dear Mid-Penn Board of Directors, it is dangerous hiking on the same trail as mountain bikers. Please create a separate connector trail for bikers. I almost got run over by a bike hiking, and it would be safer if mountain bikers have trails separate from hikers. Thank you. And then let me open my next batch. And I do notice that we do have one of our members of the public providing oral comment back, so I will go to her shortly. Just opening my next batch of them. The next comment is from Tony Kent in Redwood Estates. It states, I have reviewed the proposed trail access, and although increased community access is wonderful, safety must be the ultimate consideration. Mixing pedestrians, bikers, and equestrians is possible, but only with astute planning. Imagine our beginner athletes, mostly children, trying to learn the bike trail while encountering a horse, quite possibly being ridden with a new rider, trying to learn their best practices. Not a good idea. The preferred multi-use trail alignment would be a way to safely give these folks room to grow and learn. It also leaves lots of rooms for the more experienced riders to perfect their skills. Please consider those attempting to have a safe outlet to enjoy the preserve and their sport. This is a possibility, but not by mixing it up too soon or in the wrong location. Thank you for your time and care. The next comment is from Marta Wick in San Jose. It states, I have been riding the trails in Bear Creek Preserve since I was 8 years old. I used to go on the trail with my mom and the pony co-op ponies, but now I often go by myself to enjoy a peaceful ride in nature. I don't know if I will be able to do so when bikes are going to be allowed on the trails. All of my usual rounds would for parts be on the multi-use trail. I am riding those trails every week, and to think that a bike could whiz around those corners makes me very sad because I would not feel safe anymore. Many of the turns, especially down to the creeks, are very tight, steep, and bordered by a hill, so there is no way to see a bike until it would be right on top of me. The horse I ride right now is young and strong, and I don't think I could take it on the trail anymore. It would just take one biker who comes around the corner too fast and he could get hurt. He and I could get hurt. Please keep the multi-use trail a separate trail for the safety of all. The next comment is from Rick Parfit in Los Gatos. It states, I support a separate connector trail for bikers. I am also a mountain biker, hiker, and equestrian and appreciate the need for the connector trail, which will help complete SF Bay Rim Trail. It is easy to predicate that this trail, as well as the adjacent equestrian/hiker trail, will both be heavily used. Let's spend the extra money now so we keep our public land safely available for all users and avoid the kind of problems we've had on the John Nichols and Jones Hill trails, especially since horses will be using this trail. The next comment is from Randall Landache in Los Gatos. It states, as a mountain resident and parent, I applaud your efforts in providing open space access to our community. As an avid mountain biker, I appreciate the Bear Creek property will offer parking and trail access to the Skyline and Ridge Trail riding areas. Given that there is a horse stable on the property, I support the proposal to provide a separate bypass trail for bicyclists. It seems to be in the best interest of safety and enjoyment for all now and for years to come. Thank you. The next comment is from Nino Gritzinko in Saratoga. It states, multi-use trails, especially where bike and equestrian traffic is mixed, are unsafe for all participants, and many will choose not to use them. More so with the anticipated increase in volume after the preserve opens to the public. We strongly suggest to consider alternative bike-only connector trail for riders coming from Los Gatos and keep existing trails exclusive to equestrians, pedestrians, and families with the intent to maintain serenity of the preserve. Separate bike trails will avoid jeopardizing everyone's safety and provide most enjoyable experience for all. Thank you. The next comment is from Paul Raffaelli in San Jose. It states, for the record, I participate in all activities noted: bicycling, horseback riding, hiking, and hiking with our dog. Bicycles, non-e-assist, should be granted access to all the trails equestrians can access, at least on designated or alternate days. Trails are successfully managed in Colorado this way to avoid conflicts. On-leash dogs should also have access at a minimum during the week when visitation is expected to be lower. A variety of accessible shady trails is very important for those who hike regularly with their dogs. It makes sense to allow all parties to access trails on designated days and or times so all can enjoy a wide variety of our natural resources without conflict. Bicycle access to only the single designated trail is as acceptable to bicyclists as it would be to equestrians if the access proposal was reversed. I would also venture to guess there are many more bicyclists than equestrians. So from a trail use and access perspective, there should be more balanced availability, not less. Give all groups access at different designated days or times if there are concerns over incompatibilities, but do not shut out singular groups because one group has deemed them incompatible with their chosen activity. Thank you. The next comment is from Nancy Donahue in Los Gatos. It states, It is with great concern that I submit this comment. I have had horses for years and really appreciate the ability to ride safely on the trails in Bear Creek without having to worry about bikers. Horses are sensitive and reactive sometimes, and a lot of people don't understand to behave around them. Bikes coming at you from behind or trying to pass can cause a dangerous situation for all concerned. There are a lot of trails that bikes can utilize that we can't access as equestrians. Over the last number of years, horse trails have been diminished with significant casualties to horses and riders. I personally know of someone who, while riding in Daly Ranch in San Diego County, who was hit by a bike and not only suffered injuries, but also had to euthanize her horse. Please consider that the rights of equestrians to enjoy the trails without the burden of negotiating the trails with bikers, and allow us the safety and freedom to pursue our sport, just as the bikers can pursue theirs on the many trails and roads available to them. We can't just switch to another trail. As most of us board locally and can't seek out other places to exercise and train our horses, we are held captive to this riding area. Please feel free to contact me to discuss in more detail. Warmest regards, Nancy Donahue. The next comment is from Manal Zayed in Los Gatos. It states, I would like to request a reconsideration of the proposed multi-use trail due to safety concerns. Having bikes speeding by the horses and hikers on those steep hills and blind corners pose a legitimate safety concern for both hikers and equestrians. It would be great if Mid-Penn could reconsider the possibility of a separate bike trail adjacent to Bear Creek Road that would allow for a better and safer experience for all. And so those are all of the comments that I received prior to the start of this. I will take a look and see if others have come in. In the meantime, it looks like Carla Bowen is on the call. And Ms. Bowen, if you would like to unmute yourself, you can have 2 minutes. Ms. Bowen, can you unmute yourself? Okay, I will go to some of the others who wanted to provide oral comments. Karen Enns, are you on the call? Okay. And finally, Diane Levine, are you on the call? If you could raise your hand so we could find your name in the list as well. Okay, those are all of the comments that I've received. I don't have any others to be read into the record by those who haven't already commented. So I'll turn it back over to you, President Christine Tucker.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for all of that reading into the record as well. Directors, we are now, it's our opportunity to deliberate on all the excellent public comment that we have heard this evening. And two of the members of the public who have joined us, thank you so much for your feedback, your comments, your thoughtful perspectives on this clearly important trail complex. So to my colleagues, Director Kishimoto, we'll start with you.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the excellent presentation and the thoughtful weighing of the pros and cons. And obviously staff has given a great deal of thought to, you know, all the factors, which complex factors, given the constraints we have. And so, yes, so I'm kind of listening to all the comments. And I was struck by a couple comments. I guess, you know, one was, it's a reminder that we're talking about a public preserve. So it's if people come to use our preserve, then people should be assuming that they're going to share that trail with other people. It's not obviously nobody hopefully is expecting exclusive use. And then the other thought I had was that, you know, a multi-use trail, 12 foot wide, you know, really is nobody's first choice. It's wide and potentially less shade, and that it's not as good as a single use trail for any of the users. So I guess, and maybe that leads me to a question for staff, which is, I mean, if we did kind of allocate more money, throw more money at this? I mean, what are the prospects for coming up with, with a more satisfying experience for the three, hikers, bikers, and equestrians, given, the terrain, the difficult terrain, and given that our number one priority really has to be resource protection. So let me ask that question first.
I mean, you want me to go ahead and take a shot at that, Brian Apple?
Sure.
Yeah. So one, I think you're hearing, what I heard a lot to reflect was a desire to use the conceptual alignment. And certainly that is what, as staff, what we were trying to do. There has been enough investigation that conceptual alignment is just not feasible. I mean, anything's possible with enough money and enough willingness to, alter the natural environment. But, as far as what we do as an open space agency, that alignment, the conceptual alignment, is not feasible. Certainly the yellow alignment, one of the issues we talked about earlier is that even though that yellow alignment stays closer to Bear Creek Road, it still has a lot of intersections with the existing trail. So is that really improving it? Plus it does have more environmental impacts than, utilizing the existing roads. You certainly could look at, not, those alignments that have been evaluated. You could look at more parallel type trails. That would be more money, and as we've looked at, any type of trail access has environmental impacts, both from the use and the adjustment of the trail. But you could look at that. That is not something that we have evaluated yet. But a kind of closely parallel trail is something that could be evaluated. As far as responding to what I've heard from most of the public comment of going back to that conceptual alignment, that does not really seem feasible.
Okay, and then how? Yeah, well, okay. So I think I will keep my mind open. Listen to what my colleagues have to say, but where I would land right now is basically the staff recommendation, just because I do hear, I mean, all the trade-offs with the terrain and the costs and the experience. And obviously it's not ideal ideally we'd have a beautiful single-use trail for every single user. Then they would never have to meet anybody else, but we can't provide that. But so let me end there, and I will see what the others have to say. Thank you.
All right, Director Kishimoto, thank you. Director Riffle, we'll go to you.
Okay, thank you. Brian, I did actually, Brian Malone, I did want to give you or staff the opportunity to reply to any of the other staff or at the public comments. Are there any other points that you or the other Brian would like to make?
One thing that might be useful to respond to was the parking. So the additional public equestrian parking would be feasible at the additional parking lot that would start our planning phase for that parking lot, the north area parking lot identified on the preserve plan. That would allow for additional equestrian parking. The preferred alignment actually, as far as separating that equestrian use, is better than the conceptual alignment, because the conceptual alignment for the multi-use trail course goes right through or right from that parking lot. So that would actually fit well into that additional equestrian public trailering access. And then as far as slopes, the steepest part of the trail system is that first climb. You probably experienced it yourself or heard it from visitors. After you cross the road, the slopes on the rest of the what's under consideration tonight are less than those steep slopes. I don't know if Brian Apple, if you actually have measurements, but just from driving them, I would say in the 10 to 15% range, 15 being the very maximum, whereas we do have steeper slopes on the other side of the road.
Yeah, Brian, that's correct. I mean, I think we're a little bit higher than 15% in one location, but generally that's accurate.
Okay, great, thanks. Is that it, Brian? Any other comments that you want to make?
Yeah, no, and I guess the only other thing was as far as the done deal comment that one person mentioned. I mean, as staff, we follow the board direction, and the board direction in the preserve plan is to develop a multi-use trail with equestrian use, hiking use, and bicycle use. So when there was a request to review the location of that trail, that's what we've brought to you tonight. So certainly the board could direct, and I've heard some people said, a lot of the comments from some speakers tended towards you just shouldn't have bicycle use in this preserve or the eastern area of the preserve. That would have to be something that we would have to announce, the board would have to direct staff to bring back, and we would have to announce to the public that's under consideration. So there are parts that have been decided by the board in the past, and then this element of the location, which we're bringing to you tonight.
Right. Okay, thanks.
And
So
if I could add a little bit more.
Sure,
for
sure,
just,
please.
Just, reflecting on requests to have essentially what would be a parallel trail. As a district, we try to avoid those. We try to avoid parallel trails and instead look at establishing and creating multifunctional trails, multi-use trails. If the alignment or the point to point is the same, for many reasons, including when you create multiple parallel trails, that's creating an additional impact on the environment with the construction, but then also with the final product of having now a denuded trail alignment that is essentially taking people to the same destination point. And with our science advisory panel study that we had not too long ago, trails do provide a certain level of impact, and we know that. And so we try to minimize that as much as possible if those alignments are essentially taking people to the same destination points. So it's just a consideration that we have as a district when we're thinking about designing and constructing trails.
Oh, and there was one other question about why delay the use of the Alma Trail, and that in consideration the phasing of it. The preserve plan calls for opening the multi-use trail alignment when there's a through connection. And we've felt general manager's recommendation that there was enough of a connection for multi-modal access to the parking lot, the existing Bear Creek parking lot, to justify opening from Bear Creek Road and Highway 17 to the parking lot. But that since the preserve plan called for the entire trail width length to be opened once there was through access, we are following the direction of the board through the preserve plan, not to open it for up and back out use.
Kurt, I see Brian Apple's hand up. Perhaps he wants to add.
Yeah, thanks, Director Kirsten Tucker. I was just wondering if it would be beneficial to pull the map up again for reference as you guys are deliberating.
Sure. I think that would be a great idea. Anything else, Brian, on that? No.
Yeah, no, those were the issues and questions that were brought up during the public discussion that I felt worthwhile to address.
All right, thank you. Director Riffle, do you have further thoughts that you want to share now?
Yes, I do. I'll start kind of with a general concept and then get down to my recommendation on this. So fundamentally, I would like to see us have bikes, horses, and hikers and families to be able to use this preserve. So I don't want to exclude any of those user groups from this preserve, number one. Number two is I want to keep with the idea that we provide some way for bikers to get from basically St. Joseph area, Lexington, up to Skyline. I like that original concept, and I want to figure out a way to do that. So I'm okay with multi-use trail, which I think agrees with Director Kishimoto. But I am concerned around the stables. So what I would like to recommend is that in the area, in this eastern area, that we actually think maybe we're going to have to go back to the drawing board here and figure out how do we keep cyclists who are basically trying to get through here, this area, not only short term, up and back, but then long term, it's going to be more of a regional. How do we get them through it so that that the higher concentration, and that's the difference here, is a higher concentration of equestrians that are here and multi-ability equestrians that are feeling safe. So I would like to figure out how in this specific area that we allow for the equestrians to have use of the trails safely, but still allow the bikers to get through, and which I think means some kind of a separate trail. I'm not smart enough at this point to be able to draw lines on the map, but in concept, I think that's the way we need to go. And I kind of interesting idea from Director Siemens about some kind of parallel concept to alleviate, where we have conflicts. I'm actually hoping that we could actually do a different alignment that's not too expensive and hard to maintain and so on. And Brian, I know you've tried really hard to figure out how to do that, but I do want to see if we can separate just in this area around the stables to separate those two user groups, if you will, the bikers and the equestrians. So I'll stop there.
All right, very good. Thank you, Director Riffle. Director Sear.
Thank you. A couple of things. Just want to reiterate that a conceptual alignment is exactly that. It is conceptual in a broad sense. And so staff has done an incredible job of trying to figure out how to get bicycles through. And it's, pretty circumvent. And then I'll follow what Director Riffle said and Director Siemens, that especially in those areas where there would be overlap, if we can work out some way to duplicate that. But the other thing is that we are not predominantly a park. We are predominantly an open space district. And as was mentioned by our general manager, our primary obligation is resource protection. And so, carving up the resource extensively is not a direction I'd like to go. So I think staff has done an incredible job of thinking through this very complex situation. And so I'm at this point leaning in favor of staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Director Sear. Director Siemens.
Yeah, so I'm glad to see I have some support from a couple of board members. I agree with Director Riffle pretty much 100%. I think staff's done a great job, and I'll take from a comment from Director Kishimoto, which is, maybe we can throw a little bit more money at this and solve the problem now. So I also like the idea. If you could put the other map up that shows the where the remind us again of where the dual use sections are using the existing trail. It's this map only with the other. Yeah, there we go. And at those little sections in there that are overlap, if we could do a bicycle only bypass, wouldn't have to be, all that wide, don't have to be 12 feet wide, could be 4 feet. And if we have to build a couple of decks to help us get by some of the environmental concerns, well, so be it. We built some great decks at Ravenswood. It wouldn't hurt to build a couple here if we had to. So I think reluctantly, but I think I would support this plan with that little extra yellow stuff along in there dotted, but with the caveat, staff go back and work out a bypass around those and eliminate the overlaps. We might have to have a crossing, but not overlaps. And then the last thing was, I want to go back to the west side, and somehow we're calling a big halt to getting that trail built. Well, it's not designed yet, right? It still needs to be laid out and designed all the way up to the top. Let's get going on that. If that's part of the current project, let's continue. Let's not stop. We can get all the design done all the way up to that little bit at the top, and then figure out what to do with it along with the design of the rest of it. I don't see stopping at this point with the planning and the design effort and the environmental documents. Let's get going on the whole thing. So anyway, that's my take on the project. Thank you.
All right, Director Siemens, thank you. Director Holman.
I see Brian has his hand up. Maybe it'd be good if he could go before me.
Yeah, just to respond to Director Siemens' comment. So the entire trail is designed and built, except for a relatively easy construction of a new trail up at the top. What's difficult is the trailhead and how it interfaces with the roadways up there. But certainly coming out of this, if that's the only thing holding up the multi-use connection, that will be accelerated to the extent feasible.
Okay, I think the other problem is that 20-degree slope after you cross the road. I've looked at that, and from my perspective, I gave up. But
right, like, so yeah, the trailhead to get from the road surface into the preserve, but the vast majority of the trail is already constructed,
Yeah.
surfaced, all of that. But yes, you're right, that just that interface to get into the preserve from the roadside.
So that's that 20-foot grade we're talking about on the existing trail. I think we need to bypass that. We need to reroute that.
Yeah, it would be new trail construction rather than taking advantage of that old road cut.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Karen, for that. Over to you.
Sure, and thanks. I'm rather with, and this is going to sound like, I'm afraid that it's going to sound a little like we're not paying attention to the public. But whichever one of the directors said that, this isn't a park, it's a preserve. And the general manager also talked about how we try to avoid parallel tracks tracks in quotes here, because there's an environmental impact to that. Even putting in a single multi-use trail has an environmental impact. So it's always a matter of trying to balance the environmental consequences, impacts, while also providing public access. So I'm rather where I think it was Director Kishimoto, I think, who said that my tendency is also to go with the staff recommendation. I also do want to comment consistent with what Director Siemens was saying about that 20-degree drop there and what Brian just spoke to. That's also a concern, because safety also is, of course, something that we need to be aware of. And I know the staff in looking at this has been keeping that on the forefront of their minds too. It's not an easy one. Frankly, it's not an easy one. I already had to abandon what the preliminary or preferred alternative was. Yeah, I'm sort of leaning, I'm definitely leaning to go toward the staff recommendation with all due respect to the commenters.
All right, thank you. Director Hassett, I see your hand up.
And my mute button's off. So yeah, I first thing I'd like to do is just compliment the public commenters on an outstanding job of presenting both sides of the issue. I've really not heard a lot of good discussion like that in a long time, and kudos to all of you that took the time to speak and write and everything else. My position is changing, evolving over time. I'm very concerned about the safety issues and the safety issues in this particular situation. The first thing that concerns me is Bear Creek Stables has been used to educate and just a training period for children in particular. I mean, all the programs that I've seen run through the stables are incredible introductions to equestrian use. And I could easily see where, all it would take would be one mishap and you get somebody with paralyzed from the neck down or something, and you start to second guess your opinion on that. I just think, yes, safety around the lower part of the stables area is crucial, but safety at the other end is also as important. It may not have as much, as many users in that area, but it certainly doesn't change the fact that the horses can be skittish and create real poor safety conditions for the equestrian users. So I would love to see a separate trail for the mountain bikes. I wish there were better alternatives. I would hope that we would be able to come up with something that wouldn't cost an arm and a leg and yet be very suitable for all user groups in particular. So right now, I'm probably a no vote on the multi-use until we can figure out a way of getting a single track or a single trail for the bicyclists and a separate one for the other user groups. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Hassett. Director Holman, I see your hand still up. Is that a remnant?
Remnant, sorry.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, well, I would like to weigh in too now, and I think I'm favoring the approach that Director Hassett and Director Siemens and Director Riffle have talked about. As an equestrian, as a kid, did a lot of trail riding. When I actually went out and drove along with staff along the multi-use alignment, all I could think of was like, yikes, I can't imagine meeting a bike going fast around some of these turns as a kid, learning how to ride. So given that Bear Creek Stables is sort of a rare gem and one that is a training ground in a pretty urban area, particularly for children where their trail opportunities are limited, I would either, I guess, I feel like the 2017 preserve plan was aspirational to make these trails multi-use, but perhaps now that we've studied it more thoroughly and really thought about it, having bikes, particularly with the possibility of e-bikes mixing on this trail with young riders, young and old and middle age, I don't feel that that's safe. And so I too would like to see us figure out how to accommodate our biking friends who also want to get through but keep them. I think it would make everybody's preserve experience safer and more enjoyable to not have to worry that you're going to run into a horse or a bike around the next turn. So those are my thoughts for now. And I do want to thank staff because I know a tremendous amount of thought has gone into this and clearly trying to honor the desires of the board in 2017 and those that are codified in that preserve plan. But perhaps we need to rethink now. So those are my thoughts. I'm wondering if someone would like to make a motion, or are there any further deliberations? Or would staff like to make any comments on what you've heard from the board?
This is Anna Ruiz, General Manager. So if the board, and I know you haven't made a motion just yet, but if the board would like us to go back and evaluate the potential for a separate alignment to separate the uses in these shared segments that are shown currently in the map, I would ask then that the board have staff evaluate those and return with our conclusions, because at this point we are not sure what that would take, the feasibility of that, the implications, the cost, etc. So I would like to have that opportunity to have staff really study this further, evaluate it, develop any alternatives that they can present, and then present those to the board at a later date.
I would move that action.
This is Director Searage, seconded.
All right, thank you. We have a motion, a second. I see Director Rivell, you had your hand up for a moment.
I was actually going to say, why don't we go ahead and vote on the general manager's recommendation, but she just made another one. So I'm happy with the motion.
All right, very good. So Anna, what I am hearing you say is that we will postpone until staff has had an opportunity to consider the public's comments and the board's deliberations on this and understand how we might separate these two user groups in a way that is safe and environmentally as sensitive as possible. Okay, correct. Okay, so does that suffice for a motion? Or do we have a motion, Jen?
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, we do have a motion, but I mean, I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yes, I don't have it in the format of a motion at this time. I just have General Manager Ruiz's comments to direct staff to study options for separate user group trails and potential alignments, stating that additional time will be needed to determine the feasibility, costs, environmental impacts, et cetera, of other trail alignments, and staff would return to the board at a later date.
My words exactly.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Pete. Can we have a roll call vote, please? Unless there's any further comment on this.
I don't think it needs to be part of the motion, but I do want to clarify the section that we were looking at. And maybe, let's see if I can request remote control. And can you see my cursor now? I'm Bear Creek Stables.
No.
No.
Different map.
Oh, now I can. Now we.
Oop, you said it.
All right. On Bear Creek Stables?
Yes.
So, and this is, like I said, it doesn't have to be part of the motion, but I just want to understand the section. So as from hearing the board comments, the section of overlap is the section we want to look at. So this section here, which we know there's the constraints of the bridges, so we'll probably have to look at some shared use on those two bridge locations. But this section here, and then this segment here, whereas this lower section, there could be, equestrian access here separate, and then potentially, something on this segment once we have equestrian access at the trailhead. Are those the three segments that were of concern and interest to the board to provide additional separating trails?
Director Riffle, did you have a comment on that, a thought?
Yes, Brian, I think those are the areas that we would have the most amount of potential conflict. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And by the way, I do like that, what is it, the Briggs Trail, the Briggs Creek alternative, perhaps can be included as part of that separation idea.
Right, so this would, what we've already presented tonight, would be part of the separating the uses.
I like that. I like that idea. Yeah, that's fine with me.
And don't limit your thinking if we need another bridge.
Yeah, I think that would be my only caveat is don't limit your thinking. I mean, if something else presents itself as an opportunity, let's go for it. Even if it costs a little bit more money, let's look at it or consider it.
Yeah, I just wanted to get an idea conceptually when we go back and look at this, that we're looking at the right area.
Okay, good. Director Holman, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and great points, Brian. I was just wondering if the clerk could put the motion on the screen. And the reason I asked if that could be done is because we have a lot of people who've been participating this evening. And it might be good if they can go back and, look at this motion or take a screenshot or whatever of this motion so that they have it to refer to later. Is that possible, Jen?
It is. Give me I'm trying to formulate it into a little bit more of a motion. Give me just a moment.
Okay, sure. Thanks much.
I think the other picture looks closer. It identifies the overlaps better.
Did you want to show that, Brian, before I take over the screen sharing? Okay, I will go ahead.
I think we're good.
Okay. Give me just a moment. Okay. So for good or ill, that's what I kind of captured into a motion based on General Manager Ruiz's comments. I may clean it up a little bit, just the phrasing of it, but that's based on her comments.
All right.
Anna, it was your comments. Do you have anything that you want to say about that?
I think this generally captures it. I do understand the direction, and that is essentially to look at those segments of the proposed multi-use trail where there are shared uses currently, to separate those uses, and so that's where we will be focusing.
All right, so if we have no further direction to staff on this motion, let's go forward with a roll call.
President Kirsten Tucker?
Yes, Director Kishimoto. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Oh, you're muted now.
I assume this is not a motion to reject the staff recommendation until we have a feasible option. So is it to develop additional options? Can we say that? So we're not, this is
study additional options for separate use.
Yeah, because unless the maker in the motion they're intending to totally reject the multi-use I would keep it on the table if we're not able to develop single user groups with the right trade-offs, because
I would suggest, that you have everything before you at the next meeting, because like I said, we don't quite yet know what exists out there for these separate alignments.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be useful for the board to have all that information before you, as you make your decision, your final decision.
Right. So just to clarify, maybe it would be to direct staff to add options or develop additional options.
Study additional options for separate user group. That's fine. That looks good to me.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, very good. Anybody else before we do this vote? Nope. All right, let's go ahead with the roll call vote then, please, Jen.
Okay, Director Sear,
Yes.
Director Hassett,
Yes.
Director Holman,
Yes, with appreciation for the addition of additional.
Director Kishimoto,
Yes.
Director Riffle,
Yes.
Director Siemens,
Yes.
and President Christine Tucker.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you. And once again, thank you to our public members for joining us this evening, and to my colleagues for this excellent deliberation, and to our staff, who I know are working so hard on this and bringing their best work forward. So we'll keep at it. All right, we'll move now to board business item number 9, which is our fiscal year 2023 budget and 3-year capital improvement and action plan. And Anna, would you like to make any comments at the beginning here?
This is the second reading of the proposed action plan and budget. We went through a very detailed process of review with the board a couple of weeks ago. And so we'll provide a very high-level summary, short summary here, and ask if there's any questions as you make your final deliberation on the proposed budget and action plan. And Stefan, we're going to present the summary information.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Stefan.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Stefan Jaskulak, CFO. Yeah, as the general manager mentioned, this is the decision point for the FY23 budget. We've had 2 retreats and 2 ABC meetings and 1 public hearing. So I will keep this presentation a little bit shorter, if you don't mind. Assuming, there we go. So the general manager's recommendation for tonight is, first of all, to adopt a resolution approving the fiscal year FY23 budget and capital improvement and action plan. And then the second one is to adopt a resolution in approving the classification and compensation plan. This is, as I like to say, the entire budget in 1 page. It is a total of $83,983,515 million budget. And what typically happens with the adoption of the budget is that the board approves the expense side of it. It is a balanced budget. You can see the external revenues come in at 74.5, almost 74.5 million, divided over general fund, a little bit of Hawthorne's, Measure AA, grants and interest income, as well as the levy for the debt service for Measure AA bonds. There's a total of 74.5 million. There's other funding sources. Those total a net of 9.8 million. Most notably, you'll see there's a transfer into committed for infrastructure reserve for future coastal office of 5.4 million. There is also bond reimbursement in Measure AA of 7.3 million. And then on the bottom right of that section, you'll see calling or paying off basically the parity bonds, 6.3 million that comes out of the proceeds of the sale of 330 Distal, as well as paying off the last promissory note that we still have, and that's the Hunt note for 1.5 million, for which we've been saving up 300,000 per year for the last 5 years. So that gives us total revenues and other funding sources of 84,294,935. So total change in fund balance is a positive $311,420, of which 87,933 is in the general fund and the remainder is in the debt service fund, basically because of the rounding and the timing of the levy, the tax levy for Measure AA versus when the payments are made. So let me pause for a minute here and ask if there's any final questions on this page on the budget itself. I know 2 weeks ago when we discussed it, there were basically 2 comments on projects. One of them was the FOSM update, and the other one was Rancho San Antonio. And it will be most efficient for us to fine tune that in a quarterly update as far as budget or schedule adjustment, respectively. No questions? Then I will proceed. Assume I can get to the next slide. There we go. So this is the budget resolution. It really boils down to the board adopting this table. The 5 funds that are denoted right there with the proposed budget per fund, the expenditure side of it. General fund at 42.6, Hawthorne's at a whopping 37,200. Measure AA capital at 10,400. General fund capital at almost 7 million, and then debt service at almost 24 million. And again, that is higher than usual because we're calling some bonds. Total of 83,983,515. And that basically adopts the proposed 3-year capital improvement action plan for FY23 through FY25. Of course, these will be adjusted each year as we roll through. It's a rolling 3-year action plan. And then project schedule for implementation for FY23 shall be included in the capital operating budget of the proposed budget for FY23. So basically you're appropriating the money in that table for FY23. And then this is a summary, high-level summary of 2 resolutions again. The budget resolution, that's to move the fund transfer from general fund unassigned fund balance to the committed for infrastructure fund. That's 5.4 million. And then appropriate monies in accordance with the budget, and that's the table on the previous slide. The 5 amounts for the 5 funds. And then the second resolution is the position classification and compensation resolution, and that is also to approve that, which includes the 3% salary adjustments for classifications under the Field Employees Association and for the office supervisory and management employees. The 2 resolutions are requested for approval. And that really circles me back to the general manager's recommendation of adopting resolution approving the FY23 budget, and then adopt the resolution, approve the classification and compensation plan. And that is my presentation.
All right, Stefan, thank you very much for an excellent overview of this budget. Director Riffle, a question or comment?
Just a very quick comment and then a motion to approve the general manager's recommendation if there's no other questions from the public or from my colleagues. But just number one, staff, thank you very much for a very, very excellent budget that you've put together. I think it's clear. We've got a lot to do. And I think the process worked very well, and I'm very excited about what we have in front of us. So very good job. And I also want to thank my colleagues on the Action Plan and Budget Committee. That's Directors Holman and Sear for their work on this. And we voted 3-0 to approve this budget. And if there's no other comments, I would be happy to make a motion to approve the general manager's recommendation.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and I would like to just simply add my thanks to the ABC committee and to the staff for this fine work. And if there are no other comments.
We might want to just check to see if if there's any public comments, but
thank you for keeping me on
track
tonight.
I may have jumped the gun. Sorry.
Do we have any public comment this evening on this item?
President Kirsty Tucker, we do not have any public comments on this item or requests to speak.
Okay, very good. We'll then move to a roll call vote.
Director Sear?
Yes, and again, I'd like to echo Director Kirsten Tucker's comments about the staff work. It's been really superb, and I appreciate it. So an enthusiastic yes.
Director Hassett?
Yes, with compliments to everybody that was involved.
Director Holman,
Yes, and we can all pat ourselves on each other's back, I guess. Thank you.
Director Kishimoto,
Big yes.
Director Riffle,
Yes.
Director Siemens,
Yes, great job.
and President Christine Tucker.
Yes, thank you very
Motion
much.
passes 7-0.
All right, very good. We got to get to work now, I guess.
Absolutely. Thank you to the board for your support and also appreciation for the staff. Budget team definitely always works very hard to keep us all organized and to guide us through this whole process. It's a very good process. It's a proven process. It's long, but I think the result is that we have much more communication between board, staff, departments at all levels and have a good product. And I always say it takes a village, but it shows. So thank you.
It absolutely does, Stefan, and thank you also for making it so transparent to the public, making it very easy for our public members to understand where the money is coming from and where it's going on a yearly basis. Actually, 3 years.
3-year basis, which is.
3 year, yes. Yeah. All right, we'll move on now to our 10th item of business this evening, and that is an oral update on the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District's 50th anniversary. So let's see, Anna, do you have something to say on that, or are we going to go straight to Corey? Or
I know Corey is eager to begin the presentation, but this is to provide the board some of the highlights from a very, very successful 50th event that we held at Ravenswood, our Ravenswood Family Festival, which was quite a hit. We had a really wonderful attendance from the public. Great presentations and performances and partners that were part of the celebratory activities. Really just a wonderful way to engage our community and celebrate together their support for the work we do and the work that we are able to accomplish as a community for the preservation of our open spaces. So Corey, I'm gonna hand this over to you.
Good evening, board. Corey Skinner, Public Affairs Manager. Confirm that you can all hear me?
we can even see you.
Excellent. I have brought with me a co-presenter tonight. So while he shares his screen, Ryan McCauley, Public Affairs Specialist, will join me. I will kick us off by revisiting the project goals that we've set. You've seen these every time that we've presented, commemorating 50 years by really connecting the public to our work to increase public awareness and positive regard, to tell the whole story of Mid-Penn's legacy, including why nature is essential, how open space is preserved, and the role of rural and working lands and the partnerships involved. And then, of course, to engage and celebrate our diverse partners, volunteers, board, and staff for our collective accomplishments. And I would say that the Bayside Family Festival hit all of those goals. The event itself was not without challenges, as some of you may know. Day before, the day prior to the event, we got word that our shuttle contractor was experiencing a strike. So we had to shuffle very quickly and find a new shuttle company. As you know, we were working with an event consultant firm, and that's where that relationship paid off probably the greatest, in being able to spin out and have them find us someone else who could show up early the next morning. We finally got that resolved about 4 p.m. that night. And then we had, as many of you were at the event, you remember, even though it was about 6 weeks ago, the incredible wind that we had along the Bayshore there. That impacted not only the event, although I think we worked around it really well, it caused an unanticipated delay in getting the tents set up, which put us far behind in the morning. Best news was that staff was really, really resilient about dealing with that and scrambling together. We had a lot of help. Public Affairs led that, but had a lot of help from our event partners and a lot of other staff. And we're able to switch gears and get things going. I don't think any of that was visible at all. And our surveys show that none of that was really visible to the public. And with that, Ryan, I'll let you take over and run us through kind of some of the highlights.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, directors. Ryan McCauley, Public Affairs Specialist, here to just really provide, again, an overview on the Bayside Family Festival and show some great photos from the event. So overall, again, we're incredibly proud of the event that we were able to put together. We saw 1,600 event RSVPs online. A lot of sort of, obviously a lot of interest that we were really excited about. At the actual event, we counted over 800 attendees, which more than doubled our goal of 300. We received a lot of feedback from our partners who were very impressed by the traffic and level of public engagement and attendance. Post-event, we did issue 3 separate surveys, one to folks that had RSVP'd, sort of the general public, one to our partners who tabled and performed, and one to internal staff. Overwhelmingly, we received positive results from all 3. We received about 55 responses from the public. 90% of the survey respondents rated the event good to excellent, and 95% of the respondents indicated that they would likely to definitely visit Ravenswood, recommend it to a friend, or visit another Mid-Penn preserve in the future. So really exciting to see that feedback, that we're really interesting them in what we do and sort of getting out into one of our preserves. It should be kept in mind that the survey for attendees had a response rate of about 3.5%, which is not atypical of large sort of public surveys. So it is still sort of a fraction of our overall attendance. So do want to keep that in mind. Another caveat is that the attendee survey was only sent to folks who had RSVP'd online. There were quite a few folks that I think either saw sort of banners or flyers in local business windows and sort of stumbled upon the event. A lot of folks who also just visit Ravenswood as part of their everyday walk that sort of stumbled upon the event as well. So their responses aren't captured, but anecdotally, when we talked to a lot of folks, they gave us a lot of praise and had a good time. So again, wanted to sort of take you through a bit of the feedback that we heard from our attendee survey. Another quick note, we do have sort of quotes that are put into these slides. These are from the survey and aren't necessarily attributable to the folks pictured. So I just want to start out with 98% of surveys rated that the Discovery Journey scavenger hunt was good, very good, or excellent. This really sort of took them all over the preserve. It was another way to really get that sort of educational component. While most of the survey responses indicated that they had heard about the event through the Mid-Penn website, about a third had heard through a partner organization and 20% through a family, friend, or neighbor. So really great to hear that about half of the attendees sort of heard about it word of mouth or through our partners. Really happy with that sort of word of mouth. Anecdotally, again, staff talked to a lot of families who sort of stumbled upon the event, who didn't maybe pre-register, but were pleased to sort of come by it. One of our overarching goals for the event and sort of the 50th in general was to introduce new and younger audiences to Mid-Penn. I think when we did our benchmark study back in 2020, we found we sort of had a gap between 20 and 40. So that was one goal that we're really trying to fill. And according to our survey respondents, about 30% of attendees were from age groups 25 to 40, and about 40% were from 45 to 65, and about a quarter were 65 plus. So again, that number should be taken into account, that this doesn't sort of count the folks that didn't register and sort of, who brought their children or brought their families with them as well. And again, just some great sort of photos and a lot of positive comments. On this slide, you'll see a word cloud created through some of the survey feedback. The more common words are larger and in more bold colors. As you can see, a lot of people thanked us for the event and remarked on how much they had learned. We got a lot of compliments on our partner booths, presentations, and educational talks. Other things that we did here was to include more program and signage for performances. We heard that it was a little difficult to know sort of what was going on at the different stages at the amphitheater and the music stage. Promoting the event through local schools, that was one opportunity that we heard about and think we can pursue for our next event. And also that the venue was a bit spread out for families with young children. On that last point, we did intentionally want to sort of use the entire footprint of Ravenswood Preserve, just so we can sort of, spread people out and also utilize the space as much as possible and use it as an educational opportunity. One other piece of feedback that we did hear is some folks who sort of did stumble upon the event, who go to Ravenswood on their normal day, didn't know that the event was happening. We did have banners and sort of signage at the preserve prior to the event, but for the coastside event in September, we will aim to sort of get signage to be up earlier and more visible, so that won't happen. That event will also not be at a preserve, so that type of conflict shouldn't happen, but one of our sort of lessons learned moving forward. And next sort of photos are all about the performances. We really tried to sort of utilize locally based performances and also sort of performances that would reach out to new audiences, sort of that DEI community. 90% of the survey respondents had rated the music and dance performances as good, very good, and excellent. Here we have a folklorico group that's also local. Andy Z, he was a children's sort of performer, and Hands on Fire. That was personally my favorite performance. But again, our goal was to sort of attract that new audience. And from our survey, about 30% were unfamiliar with Mid-Penn. So really encouraging to see that about, almost a third were not sure who they are, but came out and had a great time. Again, sort of moving through our performances, we had great sort of wildlife demonstrations and educational talks. We had a ranger talk. 94% of respondents actually rated the ranger and history talks as good, very good, and excellent. Again, we had some history about sort of the site with Linda Gass and also the Insect Discovery Lab. One of the most common pieces of feedback was praise for the different wildlife demonstration. And if you got a chance to check out the Insect Discovery Lab that was inside the Educational Center, that was a very popular booth. This event was very successful in large part to our partners. Here you can see sort of all of their logos. 96% of the survey respondents rated the informational booths as good, very good, or excellent. So really excited to sort of see, all the work that we've sort of cultivated, forging these partners, sort of helps bring out the audience and sort of amplifies our message and sort of expands our net. So really, really excited that they were able to join us. Next, we can't thank staff enough. This was truly an all hands on deck team effort. And so it definitely wouldn't have been possible without sort of everybody's help. Just to shout out a few, sort of land and facilities helped clear the epicenter lot and coordinated parking across 3 different lots with visitor services. We had tabling booths from engineering and construction, planning, and natural resources. We had set up an event coordination team that sort of met internally. We met weekly to sort of vet the different aspects of the event, to get feedback, to sort of see what would work to help sort of complete and have a successful event. The event also featured docent programming along the boardwalk, which was great to sort of tell that story and receive great feedback from the survey. One thing that we did hear from our staff survey is that they actually, they had a great time volunteering, but they also, they wanted to participate in the event. They wanted to be able to see the different performances. So that's one thing that we're sort of keeping in mind as we begin planning the coastside event, is really want our staff to be able to enjoy the day as well. Again, just really can't thank staff enough. We had administrative support from budgets, finance, grants, HR, IST, real property, and the general manager's office. So I think every department was well represented. In terms of sort of the promotion and media coverage, again, that partnership outreach and having them sort of spread the word for the event was super helpful. that's something we'll definitely sort of utilize for moving forward for future events, just sort of expanding that net, amplifying that message. We also paid close attention to sort of multilingual outreach. Just sort of the week before, or possibly the week of the event, we had staff do a radio interview in Cantonese, Telemundo interview, as well as we had story coverage in Tsingtao Daily newspaper. We also got some post-event coverage in local media as well, so very excited about that. We did do a bit of paid media, sort of boosted social media posts that would help sort of expand that audience as well. We did that in English, Chinese, and Spanish as well. Moving on from the Bayside Family Festival, the celebration never stops. So last Friday, we did have an event at Lahonda Creek Preserve. We had a grasshopper loop trail opening, which is a great event as well. The opening of this trail actually marked the 250th mile of publicly accessible trails for Mid-Penn, which, serendipitously happens to fall on our 50th anniversary. So we're able to sort of celebrate two things at once. The event was meant to strengthen stakeholder relationships, appreciate staff for all their hard work, and generate publicity. Definitely want to shout out my colleague, Leanne Gesner, who sort of put this event together. It was really successful. We got really great press coverage from this event. If you saw, we landed on the front page of the San Jose Mercury News, which is always exciting to see. We also were featured in the Half Moon Bay Review and the San Mateo Daily Journal. At the event, we also had media members from the Mountain Network News and Bay Nature. At this event, we also had that pop-up sort of 50th anniversary table that we also staffed with planning, that we're talking about several La Honda projects. That weekend also coincided with the La Honda Fair, which we tabled both Saturday and Sunday. From feedback from that, folks were familiar with us in that community, but we're excited to sort of see us get out there and sort of join this community event. We also, just a couple reminders on ongoing campaigns. We do have Spotted at Mid-Penn. So Spotted at Mid-Penn is a social media sort of photo challenge where you can tag a photo that you've taken in or of one of our preserves, and you have a chance to win sort of a commemorative 50th anniversary prize. So far, we've received more than 150 submissions across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So if we do sort of keep this pace, we're on track to triple our average photo contest entries. So that's really exciting numbers. With Spotted, we're also able to sort of ask for specific photos and sort of tweak different things. We can have a week where we're asking for, pictures of mammals or sort of pictures of equestrians in case we do need some sort of photo needs. So it is, variable in that way. We also will have a component of this campaign rolling out in sort of June, July with Outer Spatial. We'll utilize their challenges feature, which will be able to, so users of Outer Spatial will be able to check in to every one of our preserves, where they sort of learn about our preserve, sort of what makes it unique, and what sort of flora and fauna you can find there. One of our goals of the celebration is to invite new visitors and to expand our audience. So we decided to not make the actual challenge you have to visit each preserve in person, but to really learn more about them all. That way, it's sort of a low barrier to entry, but we're hoping sort of interests and attracts that audience as well. Another ongoing campaign is our Open Stories. So this is our 50 years and 50 profiles. The one that just came out this week was actually for Nanette Hanko, who's obviously incredibly influential, but this is really a storytelling opportunity for 50 individuals, and sort of spreads awareness on the myriad of ways that folks interact with Mid-Penn. We've also been able to sort of use this to strengthen and forge new relationships with people who have a special relationship to the district. To date, we've had about 35,000 social media impressions and led to more than 300 referrals to the website. And with that, I will hand it back over to Corey.
Thank you, Ryan. As you also know, that we started something kind of new for Mid-Penn, was an online paid media campaign. It's not something that we had attempted before. Our goal for the campaign was 4.4 million impressions. It's an awareness campaign largely. There are some pushes. There was a 2-week push before the Bayside event. There'll be a 2-week push that are event specific and use social media before the Coastside event. We've delivered more than 4 million impressions. So we are 90% to our goal, and we've spent about a third of our spend. So really, really performing well. We've got more than 500,000 video views. There's some YouTube advertising with this. The week-over-week performance keeps improving. The ads are automated now so that you can reserve and retarget creative that is working. We have these ads in 3 different languages, in English, Spanish, and Chinese across different properties. And then what we call programmatic display. So that's Google Ads targeting against content that is environmental or outdoor related, and also just your general news content is the top performer. Again, the social media parts are turned off right now. They come back in during the events. During the time period that this has been on, it's really changed our website analytics graphics. Typically, our homepage and our Rancho San Antonio pages are our top performing pages along our website. In the early part of this, the 50th page that had the Bayside event became the top page. And currently, and for the month of May, 99% of the traffic to our website for the 50th anniversary page was generated by this paid media campaign. So it is working very, very well for us. Next slide, Ryan. What's coming up next? As Ryan mentioned, Open Stories and Spotted at Midpen are ongoing. The Outer Spatial Challenge is queued up in June or July, working on some different pieces with them. We're continuing our preserve tabling, June 10th at Windy Hill, July 8th at Montebello, and July 14th at Rancho San Antonio. Those are kind of pop-up tablings for partial days at the preserves to greet visitors, kind of learn what's on their mind. The dates are subject to change by weather or other unanticipated emergencies. And then we're leading up into the Coastside Community Celebration on September 10th. We have kicked off that celebration. We've met with the City of Half Moon Bay. We've met with the board liaisons. We have a complete run of show, and we are into the parking challenge. We expect this to draw more than the Bayside. So we are looking for up to 1,000 parking spots along the City of Half Moon Bay southern perimeter there. So that will definitely be a challenge that we've already started working on. We have a Bay Nature magazine insert in their fall issue. Those stories are almost wrapped up. I think we have one more interview happening at El Corte de Madera tomorrow. And then I am very, very relieved and pleased to report that I have a meeting scheduled with Doug McConnell on Monday, and we are moving forward with the documentary. So with that, next slide, Ryan. We will take any questions or comments you have.
All right. Wow. I'll turn to Director Siemens first.
I'm gathering that Doug McConnell is recovered mostly.
He's doing well.
Good. All right, Director Steer.
Thank you. I'm just really, really impressed. I haven't played with a whole lot of this type of media and so forth, and very thorough, Corey, and obviously a set of very skillful compatriots in your team. So really, really impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Steer. I'm very, very proud of what they've been able to accomplish. And Ryan has served as project manager, which is why he's here presenting tonight.
Yeah. All right, Director Riffle.
Yeah, kudos, Corey, to you and Ryan and the team. Not only was this really good update, and I really like the metrics and everything that you explained, and how we met our objectives, but it just looks like we have really upped our game. And it's a type of thing that we're just going to keep on heading upwards on this. So it's really nice to see this investment paying off for us. Great work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Director Kishimoto.
Well, let me add my compliments. Yes, I mean, I know I had such fun at the Ravenswood event. It was just huge. It's such amazing energy and there. So that was really great. And yes, I also found it interesting that we're using this as an opportunity to kind of push ourselves. And it was interesting about you said 100% of almost 100% of the traffic to the website from the paid. So obviously we're reaching lots of new audience with that, it seems like. So that's great news. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. I don't think it was on the slide, but I don't think I really mentioned it. The ads that are performing particularly well are the Spanish language and the Chinese language ads. Obviously, they're targeted, they're in language targeting, but they're getting a little bit higher click-through. We're about 30% over. This is new for us, so we don't have a benchmark for MidPen, but we're using an industry benchmark that is just digital advertising in kind of our space and that kind of a buy. And then we're using our Matter is our event consultant firm, or our overall 50th consulting firm, and they have a client benchmark that they use, and we're beating both of those benchmarks by about 30%, based on obviously affinity for the message that we're talking for, and then there's some really good creative, really beautiful pictures involved.
Wow. Yeah, that's really exciting to reach those new audiences. That's great.
All right, Director Holman.
I think it was you, Zoe, who started this conversation with like, wow. I would repeat that, wow. And it's really, really impressive at how many ways and numerous ways that you're making MidPen accessible to the public and known by the public. It's just really expanded the outreach tremendously. I hope we can manage the results of this, but it's a great effort and super successful. Hats off, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, and to Anna.
I just want to commend staff. This was a very heavy lift, and it was something that really stretched our abilities and what we're used to doing. We were really working outside our norms and using new non-traditional pathways to connect to people, which is something that I've been really stressing as it's something really important to do, because it's through these new pathways that we start to really engage and connect and bring in communities and parts of communities that really aren't as aware of who MidPen is and the benefits and the services we provide to our community and to our region, that really should be part of the conversation.
Yes.
And so I want to commend them because they really stretched themselves significantly. And I think we learned a lot through this process that we're going to take with us to the next event and into the future. So I'm just proud of their work and proud of them lifting us up as an organization. So thank you.
Oh, that was so well said, Anna. Thank you. Director Sear, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I put it back up because I just wanted to compliment the moments of mid-zen. I just find delightful. As something that sort of pops up on my screen and whoa, yeah. And I think there are a lot of people who are connecting with us through that particular item. And I just thought it was wonderful. So thanks for designing that and moving it forward.
Thank you, Director Sear. I'll pass that along to Eleanor, who is handling our social media, and you will hear from her. I think we've got that scheduled in July.
All right, well, there's just not a whole lot to add after all of these kudos, but I'm going to, because you all just knocked my socks off. I mean, really, starting at the very beginning of the day at the Ravenswood event, where the parking was so well handled, no problem. The shuttle was seamless in, and people were so happy to be there and just to be together, you know, for kind of the first time, maybe in a long time, where we could all just be together and reconnect with old friends and new friends. And I was so impressed with the kids. You really brought the kids and the families out and in a way that allowed them to really be hands-on and immersive. So start to finish, the Ravenswood event was just, it was perfect. I mean, I couldn't think of a single thing to change except the wind maybe, but it just made it a little bit exciting. And then the Grasshopper Loop Trail opening last weekend or last week, again, a logistically challenging site given parking. You don't want to have too many people there, but it was really wonderfully done and well organized. People were very engaged. I had people calling me saying, hey, you know, I saw this event, you know, what is that? And they came and joined in. I also have had people calling me about, oh shoot, it's not gonna be able to show, maybe. Oh well, it's the views insert in the Half Moon Bay Review in the Almanac. People are loving this. I've had a whole bunch of phone calls from people just raving about this. So the spectrum of public outreach that you have chosen and are pursuing in this year is so powerful. It's really reaching people. So with that, I'll just say I was so excited by the meeting this morning about the upcoming COSITE event, and thank you. Thank you so much for taking us through this 50th anniversary year with such innovation and commitment and hard work. It's really appreciated. Not only by us, but I think by your public. So
thank you so much. And really the kudos go to my team. We're really strong right now. We're really resilient. I'm really excited to be able to do a lot of new things, and really everything's coming together right now. So thank you all.
Yeah, so glad to hear it. All right, I see Anna's hand up and then Larry's.
Remnant, I'll take it down.
Oh, Remnant. Okay, Remnant. Larry?
My comment is I am so out of it right now. My insomnia is getting to me, and I apologize for that. I know I missed a meeting today. I don't think I could have functioned at all in that meeting, so I think you were better off without me. And the Grasshopper Loop thing event was absolutely phenomenal, and I was very pleased. It went off without a hitch, and everybody there seemed very, very positive about it. So I wish I could plug in more, but right now I just it's a struggle. So that's it.
Well, I will say, Larry, you wielded the big scissors well in that ribbon cutting.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hassett. You'll find complete notes in your inbox from Ryan. So
all right,
if you're up tonight, read them and chime in if you'd like.
Okay, I'll try. Thank you.
All right. And Director Sear.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I was kind of surprised to open my Mercury the other day, San Jose Mercury News, and there was the views. And I was really touched with that. It was nice to hear that you had a lot of positive response. The only thing on the Grasshopper Trail I have a question about is, I don't see it on the Avenza application yet. So
check with GIS on that and see if that has been uploaded. I know they were having some issues with some acronym that they call ERSI on the maps that they just got fixed today. So that may have took their resources from getting that uploaded.
Okay, thank you. So what were you suggesting I use?
It should be up in Avenza very shortly.
Okay, I'll await it because I want to go hike it. So thanks.
All right, and I know we're talking about public affairs at the moment, but I do want to give a giant shout out to our trail building staff. for the Grasshopper Loop Trail. It is absolutely spectacular. And there's just so much to see out there and to appreciate, not only in the landscape, but in the expertise of our trail builders. So much great work going on in the district right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, on that happy note, we'll move now to our informational memorandum. And I'm wondering if any member of the board has a question or a comment on the Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve Phase 2 trail improvements, the Northeast Trailhead Equestrian Access component. No? Okay. It was all about equestrian stairs. It was pretty fun. So we'll look forward to more on that.
Yeah, I read that. That was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, informational reports now. Are there, I think the ABC committee met. Is there a report on that?
President Christine Tucker, there have not been any committee meetings since the last meeting. That ABC meeting for May 31st was not held because the board did not direct the committee that they didn't need to meet again.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any staff reports for this evening? Yes, Susanna.
Thank you, President Christine Tucker. I'm Susanna Chan, Assistant General Manager. I'm very excited to share good news with you tonight. Our Rancho San Antonio Multimodal Access Study Project has been selected by the American Planning Association Northern Section to receive Award of Excellence in the Transportation Planning category. So it is quite an accomplishment for us to be recognized by APA in this category. So it's pretty amazing, and kudos to our planning team for their outstanding work on this project. Just want to share that good news with you.
That's incredibly good news, and that is quite an honor. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Susanna.
Thank you.
Okay, and Jen, I see your hand up.
Hi all, I just wanted to make an announcement to members of the board and also any members of the public that are on here. I have gotten several questions about the upcoming election in November. And so I did just want to make sure everyone is aware that the nomination period for that November 8th election starts on July 18th and it does run through August 12th. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that addition. And we'll turn to director reports now. Would any of my colleagues like to make a report on your many activities over the last couple of weeks? Director Siemens.
Yes, a couple of things. One is that I helped table, help with the table up at Mount at Ball Mountain, I guess a week or two ago. And that was very interesting, although it was a Friday, so there weren't too many guests, but I think if we'd have gone Saturday, it would have been a zoo. So it's like feast or famine. And the other thing is on Monday, I attended a Zoom meeting with the quarterly Special Districts Association meeting, and heard a presentation on fire.
Okay, anything else? Nope. All right, Director Kishimoto.
Yes, I joined Pete at that Special Districts Association meeting on Monday. So that was it was an interesting speaker, and also with lots of staff support. I'm going to be presenting to the Sierra Club on June 14th on both new trails, regional trails, and regional wildlife corridors.
Great, thank you. Director Hassett.
Yes, I just wanted to say I went up to Mount on Memorial Day weekend on a Sunday. And it was stunningly beautiful. The breeze had cleared out the sky so you could see forever. And what I was most impressed about was the wildflowers and the vegetation plans that they've got going on there now. It's doing a heck of a nice job, just making that site just so beautiful. And our two guests that we brought along with us were very, very impressed. So good job for everybody that's involved in that project. It was amazing to me.
All right, thank you, Director Hassett. Any other board members like to make a report at this time? All right, hearing none, we've had a very full meeting this evening, much accomplished. Thanks to all, and we are now adjourned.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Night.